This makes no sense.
How does that not make sense?
No sense.
Great idea, 10 for idea, but legitimacy now, I'd say, is 2.
Start your day with OTB AM, Ireland's only sports breakfast show. Watch or listen live from 7:30 and subscribe to the OTB AM podcast.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
All right, it's 7:30, it's Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We have a stacked show for you this morning, including the inclusion of a surprise inclusion this morning. It's Tommy Rooney.
Good morning, Adrian.
What's happening?
How are you?
Surprise for the good, though, is what I'm saying there.
Oh, yeah, big good
clear about
surprise.
it. If Owen's watching, like, we love you too. Where is he? What's happening?
I don't think Owen's watching. Owen boarded a flight to Berlin yesterday.
All right.
So
what's bringing him to Berlin?
Don't know. My brother's actually in Berlin as well. At
Right. Are they going to hook up
tomorrow? I don't think so. I don't think the lads know each other at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Right, well, in his absence, let's not get into too much detail about what's going on in Berlin.
You got no January holidays coming up, no?
Great city. No. Nor am I doing veganuary or dry January, anything like that.
No, don't do that.
I'm not doing dry January primarily because, like, the 3 glasses of wine I'm going to have over the course of the month, it's not really worth it.
Okay.
Veganuary, Paul Mannion is all in.
I saw that.
Not just for the month, it seems like he's bushfires in Australia, he's saying, like, you know, ice in North America and Chicago, Canada. The least I can do is change my diet, he says.
Yeah. We had him in the studio during the week. He was in with Will. Paul Mannion's 26. He's had such an incredibly successful few years in G already. I'm not sure how much onus he's putting on the fact that he's vegan on it, but...
You wouldn't strike me as the sort of fella, Tommy, who'd be able for it.
To go vegan?
Yeah.
Oh, I love my food too much.
I mean, you can eat food, though.
I know you can eat food, but I enjoy a good steak.
Listen.
I enjoy, marinating my chicken and sticking it in the oven, and 20 minutes later, it's coming out sizzling. I couldn't do it either.
I love the idea of it, and I definitely have cut down the amount of meat I take, but...
I did a lot more fishing in the last couple of years than I was.
Right.
It's important.
Just couldn't go without the steak, Tommy.
Couldn't go vegan.
That's the short story.
Different strokes for different folks.
United Liverpool, I presume, is going to occupy a lot of your time on the weekend.
I hope so.
Sunday?
So Sunday, yeah. I'll try and make a bit of time for it.
Are they going to go unbeaten for the season? Like, we had obviously the great debate was it last week we had when I didn't actually turn up then on the day. We had the great debate about whether they were going to go unbeaten, and I was saying that I don't really believe that they are for a plethora of different reasons.
Yes.
What do you think?
In the crystal ball. I actually thought that Owen had asked me to be on the crystal ball that day, so I had my answers done out. And then just before we went on here, I was like, no, I've already got Nathan.
Oh, no way.
So I was like, no
he has a
problem.
habit of doing that.
He does it a bit. I think he's getting back up. But I had pinpointed the Brighton game in between the
that's a total
quarter-final
we must bring
and
that up
semi-finals.
again.
We should bring it up again. I pinpointed, because I think I did it last year and I did quite well. Not as good as Jer. It was the Getty football one I did. But I pinpointed the Brighton game in April. I just think it's in between the Champions League quarter-final and semi-final. They're going to be that far. Surely you're going to put out the kids. The league is going to be won by that stage. Like, doesn't really matter.
The kids are pretty good as well, is the thing. Like, the kids
are all right.
Against Everton the other day, clean sheet, 1-0.
Yeah, but I just think
kids are all right.
Brighton are a decent team, and that's the game I picked out.
Can I say, Tommy, that you wouldn't have gone down well on the crystal ball?
I know.
Now that you've actually elaborated your point,
yes,
and you've shown that you've done some research, and you've actually gone into some very specific things about the exact point, that would not have gone down well on that panel. The vague, sort of shooting names off the top of your head type thing. That's what that was about.
The one thing that gets me is that Phil Egan was in this morning, landed in at 6:25. First thing he says is, lads, Liverpool are not going to go unbeaten. Says it 4 times before the show goes live this morning. They're like the Kerry fans. It's unbelievable. And
I actually think he believes that, though.
I think he does believe it.
I think he's right. And I don't think he makes the point that Liverpool couldn't care less to get it done by a point, 11 points. Who cares? It's
I
a
don't think they'll
football
care
history.
either. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, when they go to defend it next year, then, okay, they need a bit more sort of incentive. Then that can be the thing. But no, it's not about that.
The pressure will be on, though, then, to do it then. To go on.
It's a nearly impossible thing to do, obviously. So. And I think, as you rightly point out, I also, the Brighton game, Tommy, definitely pinpoint that for sure.
April 19th, I think.
Right, we're moving on.
Coming up, I think.
Here's what's coming up between now and 9:30 for you this morning, and we do want to get your comments in over the course of the morning as well, so please feel free to get in contact with us on all of your usual channels, and we'll bring those comments to our audience. Going to get stuck into the sports headlines in just a moment, let you know what's going on in the back pages of the sports newspapers this morning. Alan Quinlan is going to be in the studio in about 10 minutes' time. That's obviously plenty to get stuck into, Quinny, about, including the games obviously this weekend. Are Saracens about to be relegated to the Championship regardless of whatever happens there? They've obviously had to deal with their points deduction. Now looks as if they may get just relegated entirely. And we'll also get stuck into the Alan Quinlan's back row depth chart ahead of the Six Nations. Probably one of the most interesting areas of the pitch, so we'll get Quinny's thoughts on that. Top 5 stories for you that we've picked out just after 8, as well as Kenny Cunningham looking ahead to primarily United Liverpool at the weekend. That's going to be the main focus with Kenny for you. Sports news with Tom just after 8:30. We're going to talk about the Club GA, and in the main that's going to be Borris-Ileigh up against Ballyhale Shamrocks in the company of no better man for the weekend. That's in a Shane Stapleton going to join us in studio at about 9:15. We're going to return to our top 5 stories there, and then it's into Deal or No Deal to bring you all the way up to 9:30. So that's a bit of a flavour of what's happening this morning. Do get in contact with us right now. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Right, 7:36 on this Friday morning. Let's have a little bit of a glance at what's happening. We're going to kick off with the Irish Independent for here, and it is a picture of that man we mentioned a bit earlier on, Paul Mannion there. How climate crisis has inspired Dublin star Mannion to switch to vegan diet is the main story there. McEnany and Herity to face off for FAI president role is a story that's covered across a lot in the newspapers this morning. Aidan Fitzmaurice writing here that long-serving FAI council member Jerry McEnany will be one of 2 officials contesting the post of FAI president later in the month, alongside recently elected board member Martin Herity, who's a long association with Sligo Rovers. So there's plenty of more FAI lines across the papers today as well. One of the more interesting stories today, that Lancaster expects Farrell's Ireland to play like Leinster. There is going to now be some thread, it seems, between the way Ireland play and the way our best province plays. So we'll see how that plays out over the Six Nations.
Going to get into that with Alan Quinlan, I think, in a few minutes. I've got the back of the Star here this morning. Again, the Paul Mannion vegan line. There's another FAI story that they're going to sell their season tickets early for 2021 season. Rashford, I'll be back. Marcus Rashford played through the pain for the Anfield clash. Apparently he's going to get an injection at the weekend to help him get through the game. Down at the bottom, I think it's in a couple of the other papers as well, you can right off this season. I butchered that there. You can right off your season.
He's like there's an orthopaedic surgeon saying, by the way, I've heard this on a few stations this morning and read it. I've no idea who this guy is. He could be quack. But he's saying that prepare for pre-season, dude. Your season's done. Forget about the Euros. Jamie Vardy. I think we got Jamie Vardy's number. Jamie, were you still on that same number? Can we get you? Are you knocking around the summer at all?
Dr. Chris Wilson has performed a procedure 75 times. I would expect it to be 6 months before he could return. And just, again, another injury. Mickey Newman has been ruled out of the league from Meath.
Speaking of key important
absolutely news, 4th top scorer in the championship last year,
right.
424. He's a massive loss for Meath. He's going to be ruled out.
He'll be back by championship. He's a nightmare with injuries over the last couple of years.
He's had a tough time. Yeah, he took a year out a couple of years ago.
2018.
Even last year, I think he had surgery on his elbow.
What does that mean for Meath? Is that just
a massive blow? They're playing Division 1 football. They're going to be fighting to stay up, but Meath football need to play Division 1 football. They need to be playing games that they did in Super 8s last year where they lost, but they were in the mix for 60 minutes. They have a lot of young lads coming through again this year. But 4 or 5 lads have been named that had surgery over the winter breaks. Seamus Lavin, Porrick Harnan, Shane McEntee, Ethan Devine. They'll all be back at various stages, and Newman as well is ruled out for the league.
The Rashford news, so he's going to play. They'll give him a bit of a shot or something or other, and he'll get through it. But they're kind of goosed without him.
Yeah, he's so important.
How would we'll talk to Kenny about this a bit later on. How would Rashford or Martial go on that Liverpool team? Like, I'm not asking you.
Martial wouldn't start, not a chance.
I'm not asking that, but how would they go? Like, because they're actually, I think, if you look at it statistically, I think combination-wise between them versus Salah and Mane,
goals-wise,
the United lads have done better.
Yeah, goals-wise, Martial, Rashford, and the likes of Greenwood, they have an awful lot to offer, but like, not what Jurgen Klopp is looking for. Like, Martial is not what Klopp is. Like, all you have to do is look at the Martial's performance against David Luiz in the Arsenal game. He gave up, like he didn't want it. Yeah, I've also got the back of the Sun here. Again, the Harry Kane story. Derby County are about to be charged a potential points deduction after breaching EFL financial rules. Ashley Young has walked out of Manchester United training earlier in the week to force her move to Inter Milan. That looks like it's about to happen. And then bus flankers. Cop fans plan hostile. Pint and Pyro welcome for United after City shame. That story is only in the Sun this morning.
Yeah. Is that a in-betweeners reference?
Bus flankers, it sure is. That didn't go over my head.
It felt like it did.
I think I just read it too quickly.
I mean, I don't want to be calling you out there, Tommy, but that's what it felt like. The Irish Examiner this morning, Ronan O'Gara, there are good, if unpalatable, reasons that things are getting away from Munster. That is his very clear take on where that Munster team are at the minute, because sounds certainly from in camp this week, from Billy Holland, Keith Earls, a few more have been talking about that. Actually, look, we're not a million miles away. We've played some of the highest quality in Europe, and we're not actually that far away, so it gives a bit of a break, has been the main story from the coming out of Munster this week, and I suppose they'll probably have to say that. We'll get Quinny's thoughts on that shortly. I'm not Henry, I'm TJ Reid, Ballyhale Ace. I'm walking in Shefflin's shoes ahead, obviously, of the Club All-Ireland finals this weekend at Croke Park. That's the Irish Examiner for you this morning.
Got the Daily Mail here. A photo of Shane Lowry in Abu Dhabi on the back page. Heat on Lowry in Abu Dhabi as Kepka dazzles. 5 still not enough, says All-Star Mannion. You'd believe that from the Dubs when they say that. They're still hungry for more All-Ireland.
I'm not sure about that, Tommy. I have to say that there has been so much talk about the 5 that it was, and everybody's come out now to say that, yeah, we did address it in camp last year, and we did say this was a big thing, and we did say this is what we wanted to get done. Like, I don't know.
There's a lot of lads in their mid-20s in that team. There's a lot of lads like Brian Howard have only won 2 or 3 All-Irelands, and they want to win their 5.
The Mannion he did 4, did he? 16, 17, 18, 19.
I think Mannion has. I think
he was in China
He might have been there for 2013. I think he could have been in China. I got it here quick enough. Also in the mail, there's the story that Mark Kennedy has taken over as boss of Maxwell Town. I remember we did a really good piece with Kevin Kilbane a few years ago when he was involved in City. And also
highly rated at City and was expected for massive things, and then very surprisingly sort of got
sometimes you got to go down to take those jobs. And also Jose Mourinho is to be in line for a 7-figure bonus if he manages to steer Tottenham to the Champions League next.
2 million quid. Tommy, you're like, give us the details. You're a details man, as you proved a little bit earlier.
2 million quid. I'm just trying to find.
They've told him they're going to give him 2 million quid if he qualifies for the Champions League. I don't know. That doesn't. I'm not in the slightest bit astonished, surprised. I kind of think that's fairly standard, isn't it? Like, if you can get us into the Champions League, we're going to make lots of moolah, and we're going to give you a little bit of a share of that.
It's football. Does the money really matter at that level?
Quid is a lot of money to you and I, but in that world it means absolutely nothing.
Football would be in some trouble if they brought in salary caps, wouldn't it?
It's a theme that's it's an awkward segue into the Irish Times here, but a theme that's roughly continued in the Irish Times by Emmett Malone here this morning. Gap between the rich and poor continues to grow, he says, in relation to club finances here. Electricity League ranked 36th of 55 top flights in Europe with a combined turnover of 15 million quid. The English Premier League's 20 clubs generate most revenue between them than the 617 clubs in all 50 of Europe's top flights outside the Big Five, which is an incredible, not that awkward segue, it turns out. Along there in the Irish Times this morning, there's the story about the not wanting the Scottish Football Association looking to ban heading in under-12 training is picked up there as well. That FAI presidency line also there, that Herity and McEnany are going to go head-to-head for that post. Some unrest as well in relation to that are certainly bubbling under of questioning about some of the old guard coming back in, that we might get into a little bit of detail after 8 o'clock. That obviously it's been the phrase that's been used over the last 6 or 8 months, whatever it's been, that people want the old guard out. It seems like some of them are bubbling back in. It's the Irish Times.
I've got the Irish Mirror here. Daz fit and ready for Hammer's bow. Darren Randolph has finally made the move to West Ham from Middlesbrough, and he looks set to start after injury worries earlier this month. Put the move on ice. Rash's needle match. Marcus Rashford is set to face Liverpool this weekend. And hit for 6. Striker Kane has been warned, forget the Euros. You face up to half a year out. And also, Paul Mannion is down here in the Mirrors winning 6 All-Ireland titles, 6 Leinster titles, 4 National Leagues. And then under Desi Farrelly obviously won 2 All-Ireland under-21s, 2 Leinster under-21s, and a Leinster minor.
But 4 in a row is what I was saying.
5 in a row?
He's done 4 in a row.
Has he not won the 6?
I think, was he gone in 2015?
Oh, he must have been, yeah. He was in China for a year, wasn't he?
I'm going to rattle through 3 of the UK papers here, primarily, Tommy, because there's a lot of cricket going on. But the other line, obviously, here from Owen Slott and Alex Lowe is in relation to, this is the Times London edition, it's in relation to that big story in the English Rugby League, Rugby Union League, that Saracens relegation threat, that they've been threatened with automatic relegation from the Premiership unless they can prove within the next week that they will be under the salary cap this season. This is incredible because this story broke at the start, a little bit into the season, that this was the case. You just assumed that the new CEO was going to bring everything back into line and that everything was going to be all right on the night, but it turns out that's not the case. Put that to Alan Quinlan in just a few minutes' time. But the cricket tends to dominate across the back pages in the UK. It's a team that's picked up in the Guardian here. Blame game. Moeen Ali claims that he was made an England scapegoat. Claimed that he was made a scapegoat for England's test failings when he was in the side. He's not ready to make his return. Taking a break from cricket there, and the latest update from that South Africa-England game as well there, and finally on the Telegraph, good photograph there. Pope's leap of faith is the headline there in relation to that South Africa-England game.
Finally for me, I've got the Racing Post. Don't write off Sandcrow. Both Jack Kennedy and Eddie O'Leary are talking about Sandcrow this morning. There's a big Kennedy interview inside there. On the back, Middlesbrough-Fulham tonight in the Championship. Middlesbrough have obviously taken 13 points from their last 5 games when they were in relegation trouble. Robbie Keane still in the mix with Jonathan Woodgate.
Cool. Thanks, Tommy. You'll be back to us in a little bit. Do keep your comments coming into us wherever it is you're watching us this morning. We do want to hear from you. We've Alan Quinlan coming into the studio in just a few minutes' time. We had George Cruz, the Saracens and England forward, in studio with Nathan yesterday, and it was actually just a few hours before the latest line that's emerged from the club that they could in fact be once again deep into that relegation threat, on the basis that it seems like they haven't met their promises around the salary cap. So this interview was prior to all of that, but it was George Cruz in conversation with Nathan on Off the Ball last night.
So there's the disappointment of the final, and then you go back and you're expecting to go back to the warm bosom of Saracens, this all-conquering side, dominating Europe, dominating the Premiership, and you walk straight into one of the biggest scandals in probably English sport in recent times, with what happened with the wage cap and £5.5 million fine, 35-point deduction. As players, what's been the reaction?
Get on with it.
Simple as that?
Yeah, simple as that.
But does it take away, do you feel, from what you've achieved? You'll obviously always have the moments of the days, but again, looking further down the track, when we're talking in 20 years about Saracens, do you think as players the conversation has now changed from the all-conquering dominant team of their era to a team that cheated?
I personally don't think so. I think if you look at it and pick it apart, in terms of how we got there, in terms of creating a load of players, from academy level and bringing them through, I think there's a great argument against that.
Would you accept there's an asterisk around everything that's happened?
Look, I can see people's points of views. I'm not going to deny it. I can see people's point of views, but it's something that, for me, I'm comfortable within the situation.
Yeah, interesting stuff. The full chat with Nathan and George Cruz up on offtheball.com, so head along there and check it out. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. How are you?
Is that it? Are they going to be sort of guaranteed to be relegated now, regardless of if they've managed to overhaul this?
Well, I think it's really interesting from that meeting on Tuesday. There's still a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, I suppose, from the other Premiership chairman and other Premiership clubs, and it looks like they're going to have to offload players to be in line this year with the salary cap. So it's
incredible that happened. They got the massive points deduction and the fine, and they still haven't got their house in order.
Well, it's a bit unprecedented. Usually the accounts are audited at the end of the year, but they obviously made the decision to monitor Saracens as they go through the season. And that's what Tuesday effectively was, a disciplinary hearing, basically saying, look, you're still having your house in order fully, and what's going to happen. So they're, according to the Times, Saracens are having a meeting this morning about what they do and how they sort this problem out. And Ed Griffiths, who took over from Nigel Ray, he's indicated that there has been mistakes. So there's some people will say that they've done nothing wrong, and these business deals with the Vunipola brothers, Owen Farrell, Etoje, Richard Wigglesworth were not part of the salary cap. The hearing and the panel decided that it was part of the salary cap. So they've kind of buried their head in the sand a little bit. What's really frustrating here for everybody involved, and it's in some ways it's kind of unfair on Saracens, the findings weren't published, and there was a decision made not to do that. Lord Dyson, is it, or what's his name?
Former ministerial.
Yeah, he even said last week that it should be published, so that there has to be clarity. And if there is wrong, and then it's hard on the players like that, Nathan is asking George Cruz, because they're kind of stuck in the middle of all this, and it's administrative errors that Saracens said happen and mistakes happen, but because they were deducted at 35 points and the fine of 5.3 million, and they didn't appeal it, it would indicate that there's wrongdoing there. So in simple reality, if you sign up to an agreement, I think their arguments were that the business deals and the companies that were set up by Nigel Ray and the players weren't part of the salary cap. I think that's where the issue is, that it's been found that they are part of the salary cap.
Difficult hole to have to dig out.
So they've you know, there is that asterisk is behind Saracens, and that's the reality of it.
I think it by all accounts, it looks like they're going to have to lose a lot of those players. They're probably going to be guaranteed to be relegated to the championship. And by the way, I think that is an awful outcome. That not for them, because who cares about what happens to Saracens ultimately if this is the way they've managed to behave with their business dealings. But for the teams that will be looking to come back up from the championship next year, because even without some of the top line players, they're still most likely going to walk that championship.
Covered Saracens.
That's very unfair.
I've covered Saracens for Virgin Media in the last in a couple of rounds in Europe, and even the 2 Munster games, they chopped and changed a bit there, and they still have an incredibly powerful side. They've loads of really talented young English players. Their academy players coming through are phenomenal. And they've just but they basically have loaded their squad with top quality players, and then the top earners, the English internationals and stuff, I suppose, are on big money to hold on to them. And there's talk that they're trying to get Liam Williams off the books actually earlier than the end of the season. He's going back to the Scarlet. So Brad Barrett is out of contract, Alex Lazowski's out of contract, George Cruz could be heading to Japan. So there probably will be a situation now where they're going to try and offload players, and of course the talk is then that they're trying to offload players as it is off their squad.
Well, that at least proves or demonstrates some sort of proactiveness.
Well, there's a little bit of panic there as well, because I think if they don't get this sorted, because of the anger, particularly the Exeter chairman and Rob Baxter, the coach, have been very, very outspoken about what Saracens were doing. So it's a real mess for them. In a sense, I have some empathy for them because of Mark McCall, but they're not that popular. Incredible side, but that team that beat Leinster last year in the Champions Cup final was
should be stripped of it, Quinny, is what
balanced.
You were saying. Give it to the...
No, not Europe, but definitely the Premiership ones. Definitely the Premiership one. Europe is a little bit different because you're playing the French sides with bigger budget as well.
John Smith has been in touch on YouTube, says, gotta love the Irish living in their ivory tower. Never made a mistake in their life, he says. I mean, thanks for the comment, John.
Right, okay.
Paul Kentucky says, he asked the difficult questions and he came hard, but he's a journalist and that's his game. 2 boys left the studio at red bottoms, probably waiting for the journalist in the car park some night. That was from George Cruz in conversation with Nathan last night. But sure, look, we'll leave that there. Do keep the comments coming in. Let's get into the Irish stuff, obviously, Quinny, this week. I haven't had a chance to have you in since Johnny Sexton was confirmed as captain and the squad was named. He's quietly craved this, clearly, for a number of years, Johnny Sexton. It was mooted, I know, it might have been post-Brian himself, and there were other candidates. And I know when he was asked about it at that time, he would have always said, listen, it's not befitting of a future Irish captain to discuss it, so I won't. At a time when there was a lot of other candidates for the position very vocal about it. What is this? Is this a short-term thing for the next couple of years while they blood somebody else in and there's a bit of transition, or is there some possibility that this guy keeps going for the next 4 years?
Well, I think everything should be short-term now with the Irish rugby side, and the policy of just focus on the next game type scenario, even though it's very boring, we hear a lot from sports people. I think there's no need to look too far ahead now, because we've probably made that mistake before, getting involved in World Cup cycles and stuff. So if I'm working off that premise, I think Johnny Sexton is going to be a great captain. I'm a massive fan of Johnny Sexton. In a sense, in some ways, I was thinking after the World Cup, make James Ryan captain and start this cycle in the next few years. But you know, in some ways, it's maybe better for him. Let's see how this goes this year, next year. But Johnny Sexton will do a really good job. He's massive respect from the players, and he's really, really driven.
Do you have any issue with a 10 being captain?
No, I don't have I don't have an issue with. I think you need, if you have a backs captain, and it worked really well with Ireland, where Dricko was captain and then Paul was pack leader, and something happens, Dricko looks into Paul, what do you want to do? It's really, you kind of give the decision whether we're kicking to the corner or having a shot at goals to the forward leader and stuff like that. So it's not an issue, I think, and that's the way it'll have to work with Johnny Sexton, whoever the pack leader is, and the senior players take hold of that. So he's the right man if you're not going for the younger next cycle scenario, which would have been James Ryan for me. So I don't have any issue with it, because as I said, I think Sexton is it just depends. The downside here would be if Johnny Sexton doesn't play regularly. I hope he does for his own sake. And I did a piece of pre-Christmas or maybe after the World Cup, and it wouldn't surprise me. And I know people might say, well, Johnny Sexton will be 38 going to the World Cup. It wouldn't surprise me in any way at all if he did do that, because I think as long as he keeps the body right and keeps the performances up, he's a fantastic player. And maybe the whole change will suit the likes of Johnny Sexton, where he is. There's been change in the coaches, and I've said this a few times, it's up to Mike Catt now to give them whatever kind of attack they want and develop the game a little bit more and move the Ireland game plan to a different level and have that kind of direct approach when needed, but also have a very expansive approach. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how it pans out. I suppose that negativity will still hang with the squad for a long time, but anytime I played or was involved in the Six Nations, it's massive. So it's really important, and hopefully they'll get off to a good start in the next couple of weeks.
The new broom obviously might help with some of that, brush through some of that newish broom, some of that negativity, and also the a bunch of new players coming through, including in the back row, which is actually on the face of it looks like one of the most competitive areas that we're going to have. What's your starting back row for Ireland?
This is a very difficult one. I think Josh van der Fleer is starts at 7, and then, you know, with Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander, they're both under pressure, and there's no doubt, and there's calls for change right across the board.
Where would you go?
Positions.
Take blindside. Where would you go?
I don't think Andy Farrell is going to change a huge amount of players straight away. I think people will get a chance and a benefit to play. The problem for CJ Stander and Munster is, even though, and I thought both of them played really well last Sunday away to Racing, when your team is not winning, you're under pressure. And John Klein has paid the price for that, even though genuinely I thought he's been one of the bright lights for Munster in Europe. Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was brilliant last week, and I thought he was really good against Saracens as well in that away fixture, and he's making more carries. He was really good in Connacht. But if your team is losing, Niall Scannell as well probably had his best game in a long while last Sunday for Munster against Racing. But if your team is not winning, you're under pressure, and that's just a reality. So the collective is stronger than the individual. So I just don't. I'm not sure if Stander and O'Mahony will both be selected.
Right.
That's just my hunch, and I think Max Deegan, Caelan Doris, one of them could start in that back row. I just think the way Max Deegan has played in the last few weeks. Sensational.
Talk me through your blindside. Like the options on the face of it are, from the players that have been named, Jack O'Donoghue, Peter O'Mahony, CJ Stander or Max Deegan.
Well, if you pick the form players, people might say this is crazy. Jack O'Donoghue and Max Deegan should be in the Irish back row.
Right.
I think Jack O'Donoghue has been absolutely fantastic for Munster.
So you go Jack O'Donoghue,
and that's
6.
why he's in it. No, I think I'm not saying what I would go. I'd say if you're picking the form.
Where would you go?
I would have Max Deegan in there, and either or Peter O'Mahony or CJ Stander.
Right.
I think you need some experience there, and you need a bit of grizzle there as well. I think, as I said, Peter and CJ, who are fantastic players, they have been for Ireland. They're under massive pressure, and these younger players, Deegan and Doris, are bringing that pressure. Jack Conan is still out injured. Just look at someone like Rhys Ruddock, who hasn't been selected in the squad. It's very, very difficult on him. So maybe Max Deegan.
That's 6.
I don't know.
He's an 8 with, as Doris is an out-and-out 8. Deegan is an 8 with capacity to play a little bit.
Why are you pinning me about the starting back row? O'Mahony, Deegan and Van der Fleer. And CJ Stander to come off the bench.
You have to get. You're just including him now, just for the sake.
No, I think they're not going to. He's not. There's no way, and I don't think he should cast either of them aside. I think if you're picking on the foreign players, it'd be very unfair to leave out Max Deegan now.
Yeah.
I think he deserves a crack at it. I said pre-Christmas that Caelan Doris could be in line to start, but.
You wouldn't be tempted to put him in. There is a temptation.
Put the two of them, put Deegan and Doris in together. Well, it hasn't happened really with Leinster in Europe, so you're not going to do that with Ireland straight away.
And you're thinking Deegan over Doris at this stage?
Well, I think that's the way it's gone in the last few weeks, and I just think his numbers and his stats have been phenomenal, and he's really seemed to have ignited his performance in the last few weeks, probably on the back of the frustration of not starting away to Northampton when Caelan Doris was selected really as the kind of number 8. So probably on the back of that, yeah.
Talk to us about Munster. Obviously, Ospreys this weekend, and the conundrum is they're needing Racing to beat Saracens. They themselves will need to beat Ospreys with a bonus point, and all as long as Glasgow, Northampton and Gloucester all fail to win. Improbable. Going to happen?
Say Glasgow failed to win, Northampton failed to win, and Gloucester failed to win. Is that it? They're not improbable. It just depends what Leon do with Northampton. If Leon are out, they've top 14 next week, so it just depends what their mentality is like. I don't think Northampton are a great side, and I think they were fortunate last week against Benetton. Again, Sailor are out of it, so what do they do with Glasgow coming to the AJ Bell Stadium? I think the one that's really going to scupper them here is, I think Saracens are going to beat Racing. And that's the problem, the biggest problem, because I think the other results, Toulouse will beat Gloucester, so the other ones are not crazy results, really. Yeah. I think the one for me is but then what's happened this week with Saracens as well, does that affect him this week, and does it affect Mark McCall's selection again? If he plays his full Saracens team, they can beat Racing with a bonus point at home, because they can be that good. So yeah, there's a lot of results to go their way.
What's your take on Munster generally? Billy Holland's been out this week, Keith Earl's out this week, and saying, listen, we're not the Munster of old, we are what we are, and people they're judging us a bit too much, and we're not that far off, consider some of the quality of the teams we've played. Is there a case for that, or is that just trying to rationalise what's happening at the minute? Which
no, there is a case for that.
I think
someone tweeted me yesterday saying, oh, look what Keith Earl is saying. They linked to an article he did, and I went back and I looked at a few of the articles, and you know, Keith was there in 2008. He was with a lot of the older, the successful Munster sides that won the European Cups. He was there and he knows, and it is a bit unfair, and I've said this many times, it's unfair to compare. What's different nowadays, Adrian, is the expectation is so much higher. And, you know, I'm doing a piece in it tomorrow, and I've criticised Munster before, but I just think that they've been a little bit unlucky. Are they good enough? No. Can they get better? Yes. Is it all doom and gloom? No, it's not. It was a very difficult group, and they haven't had any sort of consistency in selection. And actually, I think where the damage was, it was the Racing game at home. And they actually played really well in that game from an attack point of view. Saracens was always, the first day against Saracens, the weather was so horrendous that it was very difficult for both sides to play any sort of rugby, or for them to chase a score when there was a bit of vulnerability. They were, you know, uber competitive and very, very good performance away at Saracens. And Racing last week, 71 minutes they were leading. So the glass is probably half full at this point. A number of years ago, I thought the glass was half empty because of structures. They brought in Graham Rowntree, Stephen Larkham. I think there's 2 world-class players coming next year. What they do need to do now, which is really important, is they need to make some change and around the squad. Players who are out of contract, they need to fill the next tier, the tier below the internationals. They need to make sure that that's better. There is some good younger players coming through. They need to integrate them between now and the end of the season. And then if they get themselves into knockout stages, you know, they're in Pro 14, which is a minimum requirement now, or even get to a final, I think they could be, you know, they could really salvage their season. So it's not as bad. And you know, so Keith, what he's saying is true, and I think I do agree with it in a sense. If I thought there was lack of effort, lack of passion, lack of an ambition to get better, like that's what happened before when I was critical, I would say it. So it's just a high expectation there, and when you won European Cups, and Munster haven't lifted a trophy in 8 or 9 years, so it's there's always going to be a bit of pressure, but some teams never win a trophies, you know. They've just got to go with that and hope that some of these younger players that have played in the Ireland 20s in the last 2 years come through, and in an ideal situation, you want young players to come through and actually challenge. And you look at him and you say, well, he's potential to be an international. It's not he's potential to be a Munster player.
Yes, yeah.
If you understand what I mean by that.
And there are some of those at Munster.
Yeah, you know, there is. The Wycherley brothers, I think Gavin Coombs is a really good player. Jack O'Sullivan, Shane Daly.
Jack O'Donoghue, another one.
Yeah, Jack O'Donoghue was there a couple of years, and
Yeah.
I think he's really played well in the last few weeks. So, of course, it can be better. But I think maybe the overseas players that they have who are not at that level, they need to look at that situation and the impact they're making. But it's disappointing, and it's always disappointing not to be in knockout stages. And that was kind of the yardstick we judged ourselves on. Make sure you're in quarterfinals, and then you can look back in the season. We lost lots of semi-finals and a few quarterfinals and a couple of finals as well. But if you're in that mix, then, and I think in the last few years getting the semi-finals was a really good achievement with what they have. They've just got
an overachievement probably.
Probably, yeah. And you know, Edinburgh probably should have beaten them in the quarterfinals last year. It is very disappointing, and I think Munster fans are always going to be frustrated. But that's talking about what Keith is talking there. There is an expectation, a pressure, whether it's fair or unfair, it's just there.
Yeah, well, we'll all have the calculators out over the weekend. Quinny, thanks, we'll enjoy it. Thanks a lot. We've got plenty coming up over the course of the next hour. Shane Stapleton is going to drop into the studio to preview the AIB All-Ireland Club Hurling finals this weekend. Kenny Cunningham is going to talk football, and we'll have our top 5 stories as well. Back in a moment.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
But when I got to Liverpool, I thought, right, I've bought myself a nice Aston Martin. I pulled up on the lights alongside Roy Keane, of all people, and I had the shades on. I think I was listening to some Speed Garage. My arm was out the window. I was having myself. And then Roy gave me that look that he's given many a people in his time. And as he sped off into the distance, I was sitting in this car, looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I need to get rid of this.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
All right, 9 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. Plenty of comments coming in. Some of them fairly abusive, Tommy, it turns out, but we're open to whatever it is people want to say. Here's what we're going to go through over the next few minutes. The top 5 stories that we picked out from the newspapers this morning. Gary O'Driscoll, the Irish physio, who's on the move to one of the top sporting franchises on the planet, potentially. We're going to let you know about that. Some allegations of doping in Kenyan athletics. We're going to talk about some of the changes in the FAI that we've touched on a little bit earlier on. We're also going to let you know about the top TV figures for the year. This is one of the most interesting stories for me in the papers today. And also the Australian Open start. It looks like it's going to start. So we're going to let you know about that as well. So we're going to kick things off. Gary O'Driscoll is the first port of call. Tommy, on that, it's the Irish Independent this morning. It's Dave Kelly. So this is the guy, people will have some awareness of him. He's had, actually, to be fair, a fascinating sporting career, Gary O'Driscoll. One of the most, I would argue, fascinating Irish sporting careers of all time. He's the cousin of Brian O'Driscoll, which in itself pushes him into that sort of royalty space. But he, as David Kelly outlines in his article this morning, was on the sideline for 2 of Ireland's games in the 2009 Grand Slam run, at which point he got the curly finger from Arsene Wenger and said, listen, you're in or you're out. And at that point he had to make obviously a pretty significant career decision, and he went to Arsenal and missed out on the Grand Slam, and I think didn't get to see a second of the Wales game, as it turns out. But he's done that. He's been at Arsenal for the last 10 years. He's been an advisor to World Rugby at one point around concussion, and was very critical indeed after he left them about that. Twice toured with the Lions, and now it looks like he's off to Liverpool. It's an incredible career path, really, for a guy who's obviously very clearly thought of. He's a guy you'll see on your TV screens very regularly. Once you clock him, you'll see him knocking around there. But it looks like Klopp has... He survived the sort of post-Wenger thing when there was a bit of a cull of, obviously, various people. He was one of the ones that stayed, which was very much to his favour. But it looks like Klopp has said, listen, this is a guy who, in the S&C space, physio space, is somebody that we need to be involved. So good luck to him.
Yeah, like he was named head of their medical services in 2018. So it wasn't only that he survived when Wenger left, like he was a key. He thrived. Like he was a key member in there. He is one of the most fascinating people in Irish sport, and he has had such a successful career. I think Jerry Flannery would have gone over to Arsenal for a while.
Johnny O'Connor.
So
Barry Solon is there at the minute.
Barry Solon. So like, there's been a strong Irish link there in the backroom staff and in the medical.
And the guy that we had on, who's name checked here, who I'll have to double, we had him on about 6 or 8 months ago, who is currently working at Arsenal. He's from Galway.
You shouldn't have started that.
No, I shouldn't have, but I will find that, Tommy, while you start to talk to us.
Do you want me to bring the story of the Kenyan
it's
doper?
labelled Kenyan doping, but I mean, I think we've overstepped the boundaries.
There's been a couple of stories during the week about failed drug tests in Kenya, but there's a little sidebar here in the Times, UK. It's tiny and it's in the corner. It's right down here. Kenyan jumped through window to avoid drug test. A Kenyan athlete ran away from anti-doping testers who visited training camp unannounced this week. Barnabas Courier, an Athletics Kenya official, has said one athlete left as if to answer a call of nature, only to jump through the window and over the fence. Courier told Reuters he refused to give more details, but added he is a fairly well-known athlete. Then it just goes into the stats. According to a World Anti-Doping Agency report, 138 Kenyans tested positive from 2004 to August 2018. And last week, the Athletics Integrity Unit provisionally suspended Wilson Kipsang, the former marathon world record holder, for failing to report his whereabouts and for tampering. Kipsang denies the charges.
Yeah, I would have not quite zero tolerance, but I have a very close to zero tolerance for this shit. Like, it's, if you're deciding to jump out the window, if there's drug testers in your gaff and you're deciding to jump out the window, you get slapped with whatever it is that's coming at you. There's obviously been a case, very recent case in Irish sport with the League of Ireland footballer Brandon Mealy, who gave a what looked to be somewhat credible rationale as to why it was that he missed the test, but still picked up a very lengthy ban. Obviously, you've had the Rio Ferdinand incident not that long ago, but I would be slapping these lads. I'm sorry, I'll be slapping you with the biggest possible ban that you can get. I'd stop short. I would say that, but I would stop short of a lifetime ban. But because you're going to get the odd case where there's actually something genuine at play. But if you're hopping out the window,
answering a call to nature,
it's like maybe you had a couple of shots of whiskey too many or something. That was like, I don't know what was going on here.
Yeah, but surely this unnamed Kenyan athlete, who is fairly well known, will be tracked down and target tested.
I don't think it's the most outrageous thing in the world to call bullshit in this, is it?
It's ridiculous. But yeah, when you compare it and contrast it to the Brandon Mealy situation, where the coverage, when that story broke, the reaction was probably quite sympathetic towards him in the manner that he got a 2-year ban. He didn't fail a test, but he didn't.
You're not going to take it.
He didn't fulfil the duties. Like, he didn't fulfil what's expected of him as a professional athlete. So,
what was they haven't said what the outcome of this is in terms of what he's...
No, I think it just literally happened overnight.
The FAI, there's a lot of stories in the newspaper this morning about the FAI and some changes. The FAI presidency role is up for debate very shortly, and it looks as if there's a couple of As Aidan Fitzmaurice writes in the Irish Independent this morning, long-serving FAI Council member Jerry McEnany, one of two officials contesting for that position, along with the recently elected board member Martin Herity, who's a long association with Sligo Rovers. And the constant narrative, obviously, Tommy, around all of the FAI positions within the board and the more full-time administrative positions as well, was that there was very much the requirement to move beyond the old guard that's constantly been referred to. But as Aidan Fitzmaurice writes here, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, said one FAI insider. News that the former board member John Early, as well as Dennis Cruz, who'd signed a letter supporting John Delaney in March, had been elected onto FAI committees, raised eyebrows. Yesterday it emerged that Jerry McEnany, who was not a board member but had been on the FAI Senior Council for almost 2 decades, will be one of 2 names to contest the election for Donald Conway's position when he steps down at the EGM later this month. The name of Jim McConnell emerged, senior FAI sources claiming that he had sought a seat on the Domestic Competitions Committee. The Donegal official joined the FAI board in 2004 and he only left last summer at the AGM. Now, like, why these guys would want to go back onto the board, first of all, is partially beyond me, but...
Well, clearly it's been their life. It's a massive part of their life.
Has there not been such a fissure created over the last number of months that you would just say, listen, grand, job done, I'm not going back there? Like, I just don't understand it.
Sure.
If the constant thing has been, we don't want the old guard coming back, and some of the old guard, I'm not saying these guys have done anything wrong at all, other than having been involved in what was what's fairly described as a bit of a shit show over the last couple of decades. Just move on.
It didn't seem like they had the board or what was going on had too much influence over anything really over those 20 years. But yeah, like every morning we're having an FAI update or another change, and
some of that has been positive.
Sure, it has.
Some of it's good. The TV viewing figures, Sean Moran writes about them in the Irish Times this morning, are out for 2019, and 2 of the top 3 are sporting occasions. Tommy.
Okay.
What was the number 1? Overall, sport, non-sport.
In 2019.
Yeah.
On Irish TV.
Yeah. Come on now, Tommy.
The Love Island finale.
No.
What was it?
Is that on Irish TV?
Virgin Media, I think.
I'll let you have a mull on
the
that.
All-Ireland football final.
No, as I give you a 10 to 9 sort of backwards of the sport ones. Number 10 is the Champions League final.
Okay.
Liverpool against Tottenham. Probably wouldn't normally feature, but I guess given the teams that were there, 633,000 tuned in for that. Ireland's World Cup opener, Ireland-Scotland, is 9th.
Fair enough.
Ireland-Denmark, surprisingly low down the list at number 8, 649,000.
Is that surprising? How many times have we bloody played Denmark in the last 2 years?
They stuffed us, maybe that people were tuning out. Dublin Mayo is in at number 7.
Dublin Mayo?
10th of August.
Oh, yeah.
700,000 roughly. Ireland, New Zealand, the World Cup. I was surprised how we're not a rugby nation, it turns out, Tommy. Ireland, New Zealand.
But sure, half the country was over in Tokyo. They're not going to be watching on Irish
Ireland,
TV.
France. There's a clasp. I presume you're making some sort of a side swipe there, yeah.
Ireland, France. There's a lot of sport.
Ireland,
Are these
France,
just sport? Is this just sport?
5 on Virgin Media. This is just the sport list, is all I'm giving you.
Okay.
But I'm still coming back to you for the overall number 1. Right, we're into the top 4 then after that. So the All-Ireland Hurling final was number 4, 830,000 people. Ireland, England of the Six Nations, nearly 1 million. Dublin, Kerry, the drawn game, nearly 1 million, number 2. And then another 2,000.
Is that it?
Tuned in for the replay. Sean Moran makes the point over the course of the article that normally you get the biggest audience for the first game rather than the replay, which I'm really surprised about. Because I would have thought that people watched the first game and went, Jesus, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I got to watch the replay.
I'd be surprised about that with the Dublin Mayo All-Ireland final replays
just
as
under
well.
1 million.
Number 1. What happened last year? Give me a hint.
No.
Go on.
Well, we'll take guesses from the. Have we anything to give them? We don't. But sure, hit us up anyway. We'll take guesses.
Come up with a prize.
When you hear it, you're going to slap your thigh and say, "Damn it, should have got that one." 20 past 8. We've one more story we'll come back to a little bit later on. 20 past 8 on this Friday morning. It is time to talk football, and it's time to say a very good morning to Kenny Cunningham. Kenny, come on in.
Long time.
What was number 1 on the all-time Irish viewing charts for 2019, Kenny, across the board, sport/non-sport?
I'm going to refrain from wishing you a Happy New Year. I'm sick of it, literally.
No, okay,
if anybody wishes me a Happy New Year, second weekend of January.
You're not having it?
Second weekend of January, no, I'm not having it. As soon as you hit double digits, that's got to be the limit in January. 10th of January, that's got to be it, surely.
I think if you haven't seen somebody or haven't spoken to them...
No, I don't. No, even then, it's an absolute stretch, like, you know what I mean?
But it's just goodwill, Kenny. It's not like there's anything...
Very awkward. I think it's tokenism. I don't think it is even goodwill, to be honest with you. It's just tokenism, innit? People are kind of... They say without even thinking about it. Don't even realise what they're saying. It makes you feel awkward when you receive it because there's that obligation. You've got to say it back, which I don't like, but... Even still, it creates a little bit of attention there when there's no need for it.
Have you a general cut-off, or are you just there is a point that somewhere you feel your way into the year and you think, right, that's enough now?
I don't have a cut-off because I don't really engage in it too much. I never quite understand the Happy New Year one. I just don't get involved full stop. Not put myself up as a Victor Meldrew type of character here, you know. I'm very happy-go-lucky.
I mean, you might not be putting yourself up like that, Kenny, but that's...
Anyway, moving on.
Football. Liverpool United is probably, one of the main things that I really want to talk to you about, Kenny. There's some other games on, obviously, over the weekend. I was reading a piece last night in Sports Illustrated about Jurgen Klopp. Grant Wall had been over to Liverpool to spend some time with the Fenway Sports Group guy, as well as some other people around Liverpool, including the manager, and was making the case that Jurgen Klopp is the best sports coach on the planet at the minute. Is he right?
I think it's an obvious thing to say, Adrian, isn't it? The level Liverpool are playing at the moment, he's the best coach around. If you're going to use that criteria, I mean, whoever's perceived to be the best team in the world at that time have the best coach, I suppose, fair enough. I don't quite buy into that. I mean, you'd have to say he's done an outstanding job there. Not just the last kind of 6 months to a year at Liverpool, but since he's gone in there in terms of slowly how the club's grown, the acquisition of players, how he kind of gelled the whole thing together, the mindset at the football club as well amongst the players. Like, I think you take a leaf from the manager in respect of that. So he certainly takes a huge amount of credit, but I wouldn't go down the road saying he's the best coach, he's the best this, that and the other. But he's doing a magnificent job, and it's not going to end. That new contract indicates he sees the short to medium term future anyway at the football club. So it's happy days ahead if you're a Liverpool supporter.
The charisma is obviously a thing that people keep coming back to. How would you have reacted to playing under a coach like that?
Yeah, it's hard though, Adrian, isn't it? On a day-to-day kind of basis, we kind of see how he kind of projects himself in front of the cameras. And what I would say is it does seem pretty natural in terms of how he engages with people. You would feel as if that's how he kind of interacts with most people, the players, even everybody else around the football club, people in the offices, tea lady, groundsman, etc., etc. And I think that's important, even from a player's perspective, in terms of how the manager engages with everybody else around the football club. As a player, I wouldn't want the manager to kind of interact with me in one way and then suddenly see him walk down the tunnel and maybe blank the groundsman like 10 yards away. So you kind of little things like that, I think, make a difference. And it looks as if he's made that type of impression around the football club. He's held in high esteem by everybody and totally respected, which is a good thing.
Yeah, just looking at the game at the weekend, it's 4:30 Sunday game that's live and off the ball. You're probably going to say that I suppose on the face of it, no United player gets into that Liverpool team. Kenny, is there...
we're not going to play that game, Adrian, are we? Many United players, because you can do better than that. Is that why you got me out of bed this morning? Go through many United players again.
You're only getting out of bed at 8:30 to talk to me, Kenny. It's not. This might be a good indicator about your general malaise towards the good year, the Happy New Year's. But when you look at Rashford and Martial, with that sort of service, that sort of pace that they might get in that Liverpool team, is there a case to be made for it because they're scoring as many goals as their Liverpool counterparts?
Yeah, I think so. If you're going to go down that road, I think there is the qualities that Martial and Rashford possess. Although I'd argue that maybe Martial, his defensive qualities, his work rate wouldn't be best suited to the way Liverpool play, our possession of football, how well that front three press, Adrian, absolutely the tenacity which they show, the kind of hunger they have to go and win the ball back you wouldn't actually describe Martial in that respect. Even Rashford, to be honest with you, has his moments where like the opposition fullback will go, we'll just kind of hold his position and allow the Manchester United fullback to deal with it. So I think both of those Manchester United players might be a small question mark in terms of their kind of defensive setup. But I'd like to think, Adrian, if you brought those players into that environment, that Liverpool environment, it's not an option whether you do or not. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you don't play. And I think you buy into that. When you're in that type of environment, those Liverpool players are, you do it because you want to be part of it. You're hungry for success. You want to be part of the team. You want to be in the starting 11. And this is the criteria: in and out possession of the ball. You have to do it. So yeah, I think very quickly those two players you mentioned would switch on to that, and I think wouldn't look uncomfortable in that Liverpool front three.
You never know what you get with United at the minute. Any given week that you watch them, it's an absolute roller coaster in terms of their displays and the results as well off the back of that. Constantly, obviously, this rush to call for Solskjaer when the results aren't going their way for him to be sacked. Is there do you see a general overall improvement, Kenny, when you step back and you look at it outside of individual results?
Not overly so. No, I wouldn't say that. And it's just the kind of inconsistent nature of the performance that's also applied to maybe introduction of the younger players, give them time to settle, kind of development players, etc. It's an ongoing kind of process. So you can take that kind of with a pinch of salt. I think there's a reasonable argument there. But I think he is under a certain amount of pressure. I always felt he would be in the job till the end of the season. I always felt he would be in the job till the end of the season, and I don't change my view on that unless some kind of extraordinary happened in terms of maybe early elimination from the Europa League. Maybe those performances, below par performances, became a little bit more regular, and most probably significantly if a manager who they were potentially looking to bring in made it known that he wouldn't be available in the summer, then I think they might have to jump. But as I say, at the moment they'll settle this summer and they'll reevaluate things. The thing the agent actually should have done before he actually got the job, when they went on record saying they weren't going to make an appointment to the summer, and then they jumped the gun under a huge amount of pressure. Granted, after the good start he made and gave him the job. Don't make that mistake this time. For me, probably sit till the end of the summer. My gut feeling tells me they're going to need a change, but I just don't feel as if Edward's going to pull the trigger between now and the end of the season.
Pochettino is the name that comes up constantly given his availability. We'd the football writer Daniel Harris on during the week, and he was saying that he didn't think that Pochettino would solve it as much as buying smartly, and it looks as if they might do some of that. But your take on that, Kenny? Pochettino, would he have a greater impact? Would he be the man? Should they? I guess he's the guy that you're kind of referring to there when you talk about the summer. Yeah, I think so. He's probably the one head and shoulders. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him, Adrian, just in terms of his kind of a lot of reasons, really. Just in terms of how he set up his team, Spurs, the kind of organisational side of things. That comes to his the team around them as well takes credit for that. They're very flexible, kind of tactically, how they played as well. If you wanted to argue, I wouldn't argue it so much in terms of the type of football that they played, kind of front football, a little bit cliched, I know. High energy football that his Tottenham team played. You wouldn't think that would lend itself well in terms of kind of Manchester United ethos, how they want to see their team play, etc., etc., etc. Developing younger players as well. We couldn't really talk too much about player acquisition down there. They didn't have a huge amount of money to spend, but I think he is the outstanding candidate. I'll be amazed if somewhere down the line, Adrian, the last few months since he left that Tottenham job, nobody from Manchester United, third party, somebody hasn't had some kind of contact with Pochettino and say, look, what are you thinking of doing going forward? Are you interested in this Manchester United job potentially at the end of the season? Are you available? Are you going to jump in the meantime, or are you going to wait? And if you are going to wait, potentially there's a job here for you. Just some conversation along that nature. I'm not saying Ed Woodward, but talking some intermediary somewhere. And certainly if those performances were to drop between now and the end of the season, and that hardcore Manchester United support, which I think is absolutely key. I think if that turns against Solskjaer, and we hear that within the confines of the stadium, I think that will give Ed Woodward the confidence to actually pull the trigger. But there's no point in pulling the trigger at the end of the season if Pochettino jumps in and takes a job in the meantime. I don't think that'll be the case now, Adrian, between now and the end of the season. I think Pochettino would be best served just to sit on his hands. I was amazed he came out and said he wanted to get back involved quickly. If I was him, I think I would have just put a statement out, look, I'm going to sit till the end of the season. He's getting paid from Tottenham between now and the end of the season anyway. Just sat on his hands till the end of the season and
put it out there that he would be available, let it be known to the bigger clubs, Manchester United included, that he's available, that he can be approached at the end of the season. I still think that may happen.
Yeah, and there'd be nothing like a statement like that to get clubs interested as well, is the other side of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. There's some chat obviously about Bruno Fernandes coming in as well, so maybe they bolster up that fairly awful midfield and maybe things start to go their way. What do you, Marcus Rashford obviously been one of the big talking points to lead into it, Kenny, and his injury. Does Solskjaer ultimately have no option here but to risk this guy? It's sort of all in for him here.
No, we can't. It's all about the nature of the injury, Adrian. You can't risk him if he's like, his mobility is kind of compromised, if he can't sprint to his maximum over 10, kind of 15 yards. If that's the case, it's ridiculous. If he has got his mobility, it's just a bit of actual pain, he can actually grit his teeth and go through it. Well, that's no problem whatsoever. You have a little injection, painkiller injection, and you get on with it. But he's the type of player for me, if his movement's compromised, he can't really sprint a kind of full pelt, that kind of change of direction, can plant his foot and change direction quickly, or kind of wary of your back. For me, there's kind of no point. That's kind of very disheartening for a player. Your best attacking player, 10 minutes into the game, you look over him, you get a sense of he's struggling, he knows he's not happy. That's an absolute psychological, that's a killer for your teammates as well. So it's a big decision. I say it's a big decision. It is a big decision. But he's not fit. He's not fit. It's as simple as that. Because they could certainly do the fit Marcus Rashford, because it gives him a fighting chance to play the type of football, that kind of counter-attacking football, which we've seen on occasions, which we've seen him play very successfully. It's the only game they can play. I know you're saying, Eddie, we don't know what we're going to get with Manchester United, but we know what we're going to get in terms of the type of football, with that kind of midfield, the lack of creativity in that midfield. We know exactly the type of football that Manchester United can only play at the moment, that kind of back-to-front, kind of counter-attacking football where they haven't got the ball, but they actually can be very successful at it with the quality of players that they have. I hope he's fit, because for me it lends itself to a more entertaining game from a tactical point of view.
Yeah, and how does that play out then in terms of the United task? Because I guess that's what it is about, isn't it? Like how United managed that, also the counter-attack from Liverpool, how they managed that high press.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not rocket science, really. How do you manage that high press from Liverpool? You don't play into their hands, Adrian. You don't continue to play kind of 1-2 touch and take unnecessary risk with your pass and 10 yards inside your penalty box. When you've got a team as efficient as Liverpool in terms of how they press the ball collectively as a team, you have to beat the press by passing over it. You're passing 20, 30 yards. I mean, that's an obvious thing. You've got to do more of that for a start. And when you haven't got the ball, you sit in, you keep a good compact shape, you defend well, which they have done on occasions, and you lean towards the counter-attacking side to the game to pick off Liverpool. And that's not easy, because Liverpool probably have two of the best 1v1 defenders in Gomez now. Gomez back in the team, and Van Dijk. It's not as if Martial and Rashford, I think, get ourselves 1v1 against these in the counter-attack. We're just burning for pace. I mean, it's an easy thing to say, hit Liverpool in the counter-attack. It's not so easy to do when you have two players as quickly as those two are, and as good as they are in 1v1 situations. So it's a bit of a Herculean task for Manchester United, not impossible.
Yeah. What's your expectation of what happens if it isn't impossible? Do you expect them to get something out of it?
I wouldn't expect them. Certainly wouldn't surprise me. I always wait to see the team sheets. Liverpool team sheets are always fascinating. I don't think it'll change too much.
Your friend could be back, Kenny.
Sorry?
Your friend could be back.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he is. The number of clean sheets they've kept in the team without him, I'll be amazed if he came back into that holding defensive season. He might come in just to give Jordan Henderson a break, certainly maybe introduce him back into the team. But I still think the next couple of games are key for Liverpool, Adrian. If Liverpool can keep this run going over the next month prior to the Champions League, Liverpool are going to be in a position prior to the Champions League qualifying game starting where they can actually put the league to bed. Nobody will be saying it, but they can actually start prioritising the Champions League, because Liverpool have an unbelievable, unique opportunity to go back-to-back Champions League victories this year. And I wouldn't have been arguing that strongly at the start of the season. Such was the drive towards the league. The whole focus would have been towards the league. For me, it was almost too much. But the start they've made, the position they're in now, they actually have a chance to actually push the league to the side mid-February. If they have that 15, 20-point lead over Manchester City and actually target the Champions League in terms of team selection going forward, where in normal circumstances, if you're going toe-to-toe with Manchester City, you probably would have been able to do that, having to put his strongest 11 out in a league game prior to the Champions League midweek game. Now he can't. He can tinker with it. A bit like your man, Fabinho. You can slick Fabinho in now on a Saturday afternoon. Now they'd let go to Madrid games coming up on the Tuesday and hold back Henderson, maybe one or two eaters. That's a luxury potentially he might have with that 15, 20-point lead over Manchester City.
Yeah. All right, we'll see how that one pans out. I want to get your thoughts quickly, Kenny. I don't know if it's been flagged up at you, but we're going to be chatting a little bit later on. It's 25 years next week since that famous Kung Fu kick You were at Wimbledon at the time. I looked up some of your results last night. You were sort of in and out of the Wimbledon team around that time. I don't know, was that injury or what was going on?
Kung Fu kick, you better put a bit more meat in the bone there, Adrian.
Not your one, Kenny, the most famous one of all time, Eric Cantona.
Who are we talking about here?
Eric Cantona.
Eric Cantona.
It'll be 25 years next week,
I was
Kenny.
thinking like there was a few others there. I was totally thinking me in particular, my teammates, the team that I played, and I was definitely trying to recollect there maybe my time at Wimbledon. But the Eric Cantona one there, wow, 25 years.
What's your recollections of it as a player? I presume it was the talk of the dressing room.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I'm trying to think, it was a midweek game, wasn't it? I can't remember if we had a game that night or would have been watching the game on the telly. Do you know what? A little bit, if I was being honest with you, Adrian, a little bit deep down, it would have been, well played.
Right, yeah.
Now, once it became perfectly obvious nobody had been injured or seriously, in the end it was a little bit of a token, wasn't it? There was a huge amount of nobody was seriously injured, but there was those kind of pictures, wasn't it? Him walking off the pitch and get kind of verbally abused off people and snapping. And yeah, look, nobody can excuse that. You've got to suck it up. That's part of professional football and get off the pitch. But we're all human beings. We've all been in that situation on the football pitch or off. Someone's in your ear. It's just at the wrong moment, and you just kind of snap. So for me, it was kind of more of a human reaction. So I remember at the time having a little bit of sympathy for him. In all honesty,
and would that have been Kenny? Go on.
No, so the length of the ban was absolutely phenomenal. That was a shame because he was such an unbelievable player. But it was quite a unique in football in terms. Yeah, certainly.
Because the phrase obviously that was used against him at the time was in relation to his nationality, and "F off back to France" was the.
But
you've got some of that.
We've all had that a little bit over the years. Your French this, your Irish that, your Scottish thing, your Welsh. You got to harden yourself to that. You can't take things like that personally. Like that's just the nature of the game. You have to get on with it, but at the same time, I understand the fact, like you do, pressurised environment like that, you brought off that, your heads are not in the right place, etc., etc. Somebody can just catch you at the wrong moment, say one thing, but just kind of sticks, Age. You know what it is, you know what I mean? Jenny, you're okay. Suddenly someone will say something, it'll just get through the barrier, won't it? And before you know it, you're over the advertising boards and you're in there. It's almost like an out-of-body experience, isn't it? You don't realise what you're doing. So
would you have heard stuff like that, anti-Irish stuff?
No, maybe a little bit. I never took it personally, though, Adrian. Like, you know what I mean? I was never running to the side of the pitch and saying, "I want this report. I've been racially abused by someone in the crowd." Like, you know what I mean? It was all part of it, part of the game. People use anything, sticks and stones, and to get a reaction. Like, you know what I mean? It was just part of it. You just got on with it. Like, you know what I mean? It was just part of the challenge. Like, you know what I mean? You kind of mentally, psychologically have to, harden yourself and get on with it. Like, you know what I mean? But I never took anything like that kind of personally. It was just kind of part of the game. You just got on with it. It
was such a monster story at the time. Like, it dominated for months after that, and if not more than that, in fact, at the time. You played United 6 weeks afterwards.
He didn't play.
He did not play. You did. Was it? I don't know. Was there still a buzz around that game? You were beaten 1-0.
Was that an FA? I can't remember what that was. That
I think it was a Premier League game.
It was a Premier League game, was it?
There was a late goal, Kenny, 6 minutes from time, a late goal that United beat Wimbledon 1-0.
Always a late goal, United, always. It was never a coincidence, Adrian.
Who scored?
In the dressing room after, we were so unlucky. It was a late goal again. It was absolutely typical how they played, like just ground you down, kept playing their football, and eventually it kind of relented. But no, I don't remember that having a big influence on the game or being a massive talking point.
Who scored that?
Far too much time spent and worrying about all the other Manchester United players on the pitch, probably the likes of Giggs in particular, players like this.
Who scored that late goal, Kenny? 84 minutes.
I was constantly a worried man going onto the pitch against Manchester United. The troubles in my own mind about Eric Cantona's mental state of mind.
Who scored the United goal?
Oh, scored the United goal. No idea whatsoever. Could be centre for Cole.
No.
Wasn't even it. Centre midfielder, was it?
No.
Goals. Steve
Bruce.
Oh, was that like that wasn't the infamous to the goalkeeper's legs?
I don't know.
Was it?
You'd know better than I. You had much more close proximity to that goal than I was.
That's a story for another day. Yeah, I do remember one instance, ball through the keeper, like clutching the air, the ball gone through his legs, and Steve Bruce tapping it into an empty net. But yeah, that kind of stung a bit. I will admit, don't go there, Adrian. That's another bad memory from the past I don't want to think about.
Are you talking about the goal or the goal scorer?
The goal. I'm talking about the goal. I don't want to talk about the goal, to be honest with you.
Kenny, beauty, thanks a million as always.
Cheers, Adrian. Take care, bud.
Kenny Cunningham on the line there, and plenty of people in contact about the new year, and you know, when you kind of can't say Happy New Year to somebody, including cheer up, Kenny, Happy New Year from Stephen Fraser there. Jesus, Kenny, relax, you cranky bollocks, says James Linan, and plenty more on that line as well. So there we go. That's where we're going to leave the football for the minute. That game is live and off the ball, obviously, over the course of the weekend. We've Tom Malone in studio next to pick us through everything that's happening in the world of live sport on this Friday morning. It's 8:40. Very good morning to you, wherever it is that you're joining us this morning. Very good morning to you. Do get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you. We've Tom Malone in studio next. After that, Shane Stapleton is going to preview the weekend's club hurling final, so that all to come. But before all of that, Mark Lawrenson joined last night's football show on Off the Ball. Here's his thoughts on Manchester United's trip to Liverpool.
Last season, when Liverpool went to Old Trafford, that for one of the very rare occasions, Klopp got it wrong. He went a little bit kind of protective of the team as much as anything, and never really, as we've seen this season, it's just look, we go for the jugular, whichever team it is. And I think, as I say, that was one of the few mistakes that he made. I think once you see Sunday, I mean, once the game starts, Liverpool will just absolutely, totally go for the jugular, because that's the way that they play. And also, we know with Manchester United as well, you're not sure from game to game which side's going to turn up. One that can look very good on occasions, and one that can look extremely ordinary. I mean, I've not seen the papers today. Is Rashford looking like he's going to be fit?
I'd say it's very much touch and go, 50-50 at best for United.
Okay. Well, that would make a great difference, because what United do have, I mean, if they play the regular front three, or what you would consider the front three, they've got fantastic pace, and if they just sit in and look to try and play on the break, that will be a little bit of a problem for Liverpool. But I just don't look at Manchester United across the midfield and think they could possibly dominate the game. And, you know, with Liverpool, while the midfield players aren't spectacular, they're all 8.5, 9 out of 10 every single week, and they cover an unbelievable amount of ground. You know, it's the way that the team's set up. I mean, they get the width from the full-backs, as everybody knows, but the three lads up front are just outstanding.
All right, that was Mark Lawrenson on conversation with Nathan and Off the Ball last night. You can check out that full piece up on offtheball.com. Somebody on our YouTube channel says, rugby is a great sport, but let's be realistic. If you train the best GAA players for a year, they'd probably be at a standard to replace all of the Irish backs. Now, they haven't put their name to it, so that's a lot of bollocks, obviously. But thanks very much for the comment, nevertheless. Tom Malone, how are you getting on?
I'm not too bad.
Are you having that?
No, absolutely not. No, it's such a different skill set. Like, you know, the level. First of all, the level of contact is just light years ahead of, you know, between the two sports. So,
that's insane.
You know, the different demands. I mean, the aerobic capacity of Gaelic football is probably far beyond those of rugby players, but the demands of the sports are completely different.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
None.
Shane Lowry.
Yeah, Shane Lowry had a bad start, but he's actually got a birdie back, so he's back to where he was. He's now 2 under par after 2 holes of his second round. So started off with a bogey, got it immediately back, 2 under par, 7 shots off the lead that's currently held by China's Hao Tong Lee out in front on 9 under par. Brooks Koepka's had a good start as well. He's to 8 under par. He's playing alongside Lowry. He's now 2 under for the day, 8 under for the tournament, 1 off the lead. Padraig Harrington's just teed off. He's way off the pace though on 4 over par. In rugby this afternoon, all the Irish provinces will name their teams ahead of the weekend's final round of Heineken European Cup action. Munster and Ulster are the sides with most on the line. Munster have an outside chance of a quarter-final berth. They need to take a bonus point at home to the Ospreys on Sunday, but also need other results to go their way as well. While Ulster will book their spot in the last 8 provided they beat Bath in Belfast tomorrow. Leinster already through, but a bonus point win for them would see them be the first team to ever take 30 points in the pool stages of the competition. Stuart Lancaster had some interesting thoughts, by the way, on the BBC 5 Live Rugby Weekly podcast, and he said this time around it should be easier for Leinster players to reintegrate after Ireland in the Six Nations.
So when those Leinster players leave and go into the Ireland camp in 2 weeks' time, or how long it's going to be, what will it be? What will they be coaching, and how will that look when they come back? And actually, knowing Andy and Mike, and obviously having worked with them, it'll be pretty close, I think, to what we do. I'm not saying it'll be the same. I think there'll be differences in attack and differences in defence, but philosophically, knowing those two as I do, Andy and Mike in particular, I think there'll be an element of similarity.
More overlap than there may be.
Which should make the reintegration piece easier.
From what he's saying, I'm deducing that it wasn't all that easy beforehand.
No, he seems saying that the sort of, he's reckoning the systems be slightly more aligned compared to where it was with Schmidt and now with Farrell. But I think particularly Cat is the sort of one driver in that. The other thing you're saying is that, you know, everyone's like, oh, what an advantageous position Leinster are in, but he was kind of the first point of that was that it was actually difficult because they're there with 16 out of 38 players are Leinster based, and then they come back in with very little break into.
They'll be grand though, like, you know what I mean?
Quarter-final, yeah. Look, they've gone 16 out of 16 so far this season. So
I mean,
I don't think we'll break out the violin for them just yet.
We won't. The prospect of Ireland playing Leinster style rugby, I think, could be enticing to all and sundry.
Yeah, far more exciting. Some worrying news for Saracens. Meanwhile, Saracens could be relegated from the English Premiership if they fail to meet the salary cap this season. The defending champions, of course, already docked 35 points and fined £5.3 million for breaches over the previous 3 campaigns. But the other clubs are now demanding that Saracens prove they are within the £7 million limit for this year, or they face demotion to the Championship. This is huge because they're going to bring in auditors mid-season to ensure that Saracens comply, but included in the, so say Saracens just pay a player off and get rid of them, those payoff totals will also be included in that salary cap limit. So it's not going to be straightforward for Saracens if they are in breach, and it seems that the other clubs have sort of rounded on them a little bit, and you know they still think that there is an issue there.
Yeah.
So we await to see how that'll develop over the next couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Manchester United striker Marcus Rashford is set to play through the barrier in Sunday's Premier League showdown with Liverpool at Anfield. Of course, the England player suffered a back injury in Wednesday's FA Cup win over Wolves. United like 27 points behind the Reds at the top of the table. Ashley Young, meanwhile, is set to complete his transfer from Manchester United to Inter Milan today. Tonight, Fulham can go third in the Sky Bet Championship should they overcome Middlesbrough later, while Rangers host Stranraer in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup. Boss Stephen Gerrard's side suffered defeat to Celtic in last month's League Cup final, and the former Liverpool legend says that that's made them even more determined to get their hands on silverware.
You know, it's a competition that we want to win, and we want to go all the way to Hampden in as well. You know, the experience of Hampden in the League Cup has given us a real good taste, and I'm sure the players echo this, that we want to go all the way. So we'll treat Stranraer with the utmost respect.
Both those games kick off at 7:45 this evening, but yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? It's like when you heard Joe.
That should just be clipped up, and like there's definitely, but we'll treat Stranraer with the utmost respect.
That's like when you hear Joe Brawley talking on the piece about when like Dublin line up against Wicklow. It's fine, I can say this, I'm from Wicklow, and they're like, oh, we'll give Wicklow every respect, and you're like, we're going to get an almighty high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, with secret Gaelic Games in Meath forward, Mickey Newman is set to miss the Allianz National Football League campaign after he requires hip surgery. And in snooker, the remaining finalists of the Masters will be confirmed today. Steve Maguire plays David Gilbert this afternoon, with Karen Wilson to meet Stuart Bingham tonight. And later there's racing from Dundalk, first going to post at 5 o'clock.
Thanks, William Tom. Fair play. Cheers. It's 8:47 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. We're going to talk GA next. Still plenty to come after that. We're going to be doing our deal or no deal and plenty more besides as well. So do keep your comments coming into us. But as part of our partnership with the GA for the AIB All-Ireland Club Championships, the OTB Productions has been out and about. We shot a beautiful video piece with the All-Ireland Club hurling finalist Borris-Ileigh. We've a short segment from that piece on the way for you now, but the full piece available over on offtheball.com, on our YouTube channel, and check out our social channels as well. It's pretty much up on most of those. Do check it out. But 7 minutes long, beautiful production, and tells a great story. Brilliantly crafted and led by Shane Stapleton, and he'll be in studio with us next to preview the final. Both the hurling and football finals take place this Sunday, the 19th of January at Croke Park. Tickets available from ga.tickets.ie and usual outlets including local clubs, SuperValue and Central stores. Here's a bit of a teaser of what to expect from that Borris-Ileigh special.
You know, when you put on that jersey, that maroon and white jersey, you know, as Timmy quite rightly said, you immediately, if you reflect, you think of all the guys who went before. I mean, all the fantastic contributions that originated from here representing Tipperary. I mean, if you think of, we've had 4 captains in this, over 40 Celtic crosses in this small parish, and it all started with that.
Oh, that is that's a bit of a flavour of what's coming up on the Borris-Ileigh. It's out there. It's Borris-Ileigh special. It's a beautiful piece of work, and partly led by Shane Stapleton. Good morning to you, Shane.
How are you doing, Adrian?
Lovely, lovely stuff.
Yeah, it was great to be down there and just reflect on 1987. I have no memories of it. I would have been 4 years of age at the time, but my mother has told me there in the past year, well, she told me previously as well, that I was up at that All-Ireland final against Rathnewer.
All right.
No recollection, but the entire town, sure, it's a small place, but the entire parish hopped onto a train that was chartered to go up for the game. And sure, the big thing was who's going to be at home to mind all the houses. But it would have been magical times, and they're back again. I mean, I was in the local bar, the one where the interviews were being done after the All-Ireland semi-final against St. Thomas's, and it's just a smile on everyone's face. There was a sort of an element of dreamland down there.
Yeah.
So
Stapleton's, is it?
Yeah, well, like, it's one of those things where passed through the generations. There's a different surname that actually owns it now. They just kept it as Stapleton's. It's referred to as Joe's, so Joe Stapleton would have owned it. and then you would have had Mick Cohen, who was on the 1987 team. He took it over with Breed, and Mick Cohen is sadly the only person from the 87 team who's passed away.
Right.
And now Breed is running the show in there. But, Joe's is what they still call it.
Well, really worth, if you want to know the details of the 87 team and sort of to pick through the thing that for me that resonated most was the importance, clearly. Really, it's a very obvious point, but the importance that the community has put behind this game, and the status that the players that would have played in 97, clearly having the community is seen a bit like gods, and if the lads can get it done Sunday, then, you know, people will have a new set of heroes almost to look up to. It looked and sounded like the entire community is just hopping and ready for Sunday.
Oh yeah, look, everyone weighs in behind it. Like the identity of Borris-Ileigh is intertwined with hurling, and growing up there was nothing going on but that. You know, you'd walk down to the park to have a few pucks, and going past Sean Kenny's house, who was the, if I remember the year correctly, 1950 All-Ireland winning captain with Tipperary, baiting the ball off his ball, and he coming out giving out to you for making a racket. And you just, you know, down to park 10 in the morning, leave at 11 at night. You know, those summer days when you've no school, nothing else to do, so you're bet down to the park. So I would say that 87 team, and they'd won a couple of county titles in the 80s. That was they probably cast a shadow over for the next generations to come, and those generations probably struggled to live up to that success. But like, the mood of the town is probably dictated somewhat by hurling.
Yeah.
Everyone just loves it so much down there, and the fact that things are going well, unexpectedly so, because at the start of the season, everyone thought, you know, Borris-Ileigh can have a good season. A load of injuries in the 2018 season. 2019, everyone seems in good shape. But Borris-Ileigh have been pretty much underdogs in every game they've played since the Tipperary quarter-final. So the fact that this keeps rolling on, it's got that kind of magical feel.
In another year, the Stapleton household might have been, it strikes me, might have been fairly torn over this one, but it obviously wasn't to be for you didn't get to go to Croke Park. And
with Coola?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, can you imagine that? Like, and this happened a couple of years ago with when with Coola we got to the All-Ireland final in 2017. We'd had a guy, Niall Keane, who had just joined from Ballier of Clare that season, and he ends up in an All-Ireland final panel against his brother on the other side, and obviously his parents are there too. But that didn't happen, and I'll be honest, I'm glad it didn't happen.
Really?
I mean, of course,
I'd love that.
I'd love to win another All-Ireland, but imagine your whole town kind of shouting against you where you're from. And believe me, I love playing for Coola, but at the same time, it kind of I can enjoy watching what Borris-Ileigh are doing so much more, because, you know, my skin in the game is all in one direction. And especially with the parents too. The two of them are absolutely insane hurling people.
They'd have had to roar. They wouldn't have any option but to roar against you. Nobody needs
100%.
that.
And if they did anything but roar against me, they roar against me most days anyway. But I'd have no issue with that.
Your ma's going all out here. I've seen a couple of photographs that I think we're going to be able to get up on screen of the sense of what's happening around Borris-Ileigh, with the town getting behind them, with the mannequins and bunting and whatever else you're having.
Yeah, that's it. Like my mother would have a mannequin mannequin. She used to own a clothes shop, so now she puts the mannequin out the front of the house and has a Borris-Ileigh jersey on it with the family nickname is Saint, so Saint Patrick is on that. My brother Patrick, or Paddy, is full back. And then across the road at my father's house, not to be outdone, he has he got that cut out of, I suppose it's chipboard or something like that. The massive cock, so the bantam cock is the emblem of Borris-Ileigh. So he got that and painted it and threw it up in the front of the house, and he's not lacking flags either, is he?
I'm partly reluctant to ask this question, but where does the cock come from?
I think it's something that came from the 1950s. I can't think of it. Jerry Tracy was on the news last night explaining that he's involved in the board in Borris-Ileigh. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was after one of the games that they had the bantam cock out, and the cock went up. That's the term that's always used. The cock went up, and a big roar went out. I think it was in the 50s, and you know, that kind of launched the tradition.
You'd have the animal rights people down now telling you to put the cock away.
It'll be an all right. Look, I mean, the cock is always very well treated. I mean, it's hard to believe those words just came out of my mouth.
I think we're going to move on. I think what's going to happen here tonight. I think we pushed that boundary as far as we can possibly put it.
Don't talk about hurling, no.
Right, we will. This one is everything. Tip against Kilkenny. It has TJ up against Brendan Maher. It's got the coaches on either side who are involved together in Offaly. It's got a bit of everything. I think even if you're not involved in either team, there's a reason to be watching this one.
Yeah, I mean, where else would you see that? Only GA, that you have the manager of one team, Johnny Kelly, the centre back and captain on another team, and they're joined together with Offaly as a management team. It's kind of insane. Like TJ Reid, arguably the best hurler in the game. Brendan Maher having the most magical season going. I don't know. There's just Borris-Ileigh are massive underdogs. There's no doubt about it. Like, this could be a game whereby Ballyhale could win and win comfortably, as they've done many times, and I think everyone's aware that if Ballyhale click, Borris-Ileigh are in trouble. But at the same time, Borris-Ileigh are a team of absolute heart. They have a very, very solid idea of what they're doing, very good game plan, and there's no lack of skill there either. And a couple of young lads to boot who could light it up on any day.
I saw Anthony Daly making the point. You're saying that they're massive underdogs. He was saying that he's not sure. He thinks that that's actually slightly misleading, in that Borris-Ileigh have been actually hurling really well, and the gap isn't that much.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to take into consideration that I'm sort of almost fearful of the Ballyhale. You know that thing that Kilkenny did, where they'd score 1 or 2 goals of a shot and kill off a team?
Yeah.
There's always that fear in the back of your mind if you're shouting for Borris-Ileigh, because that could happen. You have TJ Reid, Colin Fennelly, massive goal threats. Adrian Mullen is a young hurler of the year. You have a couple of other young lads. You could have 4 to 6 Kilkenny attack playing for Ballyhale. You know, that will line out for the county next season. So it's just that there's a danger of that. I've no doubt that Borris-Ileigh could win this game, but it's just Ballyhale could rout Borris too. It's that kind of way. It could be anywhere between a Ballyhale rout and a Borris-Ileigh win. And obviously we know which side I'm hoping for.
And what's in terms of the styles and what if Borris-Ileigh are to get it done, I mean, outside of trying to put the shackles on a number of those players that you've just mentioned, tactically, what's the play?
Well, I think in a lot of games, Borris-Ileigh have had it that Dan McCormack will sit kind of in front of who would be wing forward for Tipperary. He'd be sitting in front of the full back line. So my brother Paddy is going to be up against Colin Fennelly. I think that's how everyone would see it now. Colin Fennelly came out to the half-forward line against Schlockneil a bit, so maybe he'll do that again. They do that at times. You'd imagine Brendan Maher will pick up TJ Reid, as they did in the All-Ireland final this year. And TJ Reid loves to sort of roam from centre forward, because he can go anywhere from between his own 45 all the way up to the goal and either bury one or set one up. So you'd imagine Brendan will be on him, and when TJ roams backwards, that hopefully Brendan can actually get on the ball in a dangerous area, as he has done against Ballygunner and St Thomas's, and do a bit of damage. And you need Dan McCormack kind of shutting up the back door, which will of course mean at the other end Michael Fennelly will be able to stand in front of his full back line. So Borris-Ileigh will need the likes of Conor Kenny, whose nickname is Moose, but he runs like a deer. They'll need him to catch a few puckouts and get a few attacks going. But like, Borris have a fairly solid spine there with Paddy at full back, Dan McCormack kind of sweeping, and Brendan Maher in the half back line, kind of marking but attacking from deep. So Borris they'll need kind of everything to come right, as it has done the last couple of days. So it's not coincidence either.
Well, isn't that the thing? Like, when you think about the conversation that you assume is happening in that Borris-Ileigh dressing room over the last couple of weeks, that it's the old cliche, but there's no reason for them to be fearful of anybody, given the nature, the run that they've had. They probably weren't even expected to come out of Tipperary this year.
No, they definitely weren't. there was like 5 or 6 teams, like Thurles Sarsfields weren't as good this year, but there were about 5 or 6 teams in Tipperary that you know, on any other given day, if the championship was played again tomorrow, a different team could have come out just the way it went. But like Borris-Ileigh is a team that have always had talent, even in the last 33 years in between the All-Ireland win and now. There was always talent, but there was always probably just a couple of holes in the team, always a couple of backs that were converted into forwards. You know, that kind of thing happens in club teams a lot. But I think this year, with the emergence of 2 lads who were still in 6th year and had to play in the Harty Cup last week, a couple of days after the Club All-Ireland semi-final, you just got the right pieces in place at the right time to make this run. There aren't holes on the team anymore. And it's actually funny, one of the midfielders, he was interviewed in the Irish Farmers Journal last week. It's great. Tommy Ryan Foot. Every Ryan has to have a nickname. He had a big spread all over the Irish Farmers Journal with him photographed all over the farm. It's great. Actually, both teams are like that because after the All-Ireland semi-final, TJ Reid had up on Instagram I think he was delivering a calf. This was like 20 to 12 at night. So you've got 2 fairly simple rural towns.
They're probably not in the M50 last night. It's incredible that you've touched on it there, but incredible that no Tipperary team has won it since Borris in 33 years. I couldn't believe that when I heard it over the course of the chat. Tumavara have been there once since then, but that no team has actually won it is bloody incredible. We mentioned the Borris route, obviously, to the final, but Ballyhale's experience was at 4 in the last... This is their 4th in the last decade, something like that, and they've won the 3 they've been there before. Like, there are strong reasons to suggest that, that despite Anthony Daly's point that they've been there, they've done it, they've that bank of playing in Croke Park, and that they might actually justify their favourites tag.
Especially, like, if it was last year, they turned over their team quite a lot from the time they beat Kilmallock 4 years earlier. But if it was last year, you could say, okay, there's a couple of new young lads who haven't played before at this stage, but they've now pretty much all played last year. But something that a stat I kind of stumbled upon when I was just looking at the year that Ballyhale were founded, 1972. If they go on and win the All-Ireland this year, they'll have won an All-Ireland every 6 years since their inception, which is like, that's beyond belief.
That's insane.
But yeah, there's definitely that thing from their point of view that they're so used to this stage that every player on their team, be it with Kilkenny, be it with underage, or be it with Ballyhale, they're kind of used to this. Whereas with Borris-Ileigh, there's plenty of lads. There's a couple of multiple All-Ireland winners on the team. There's probably a slight bit more. It's just, I think Borris-Ileigh need to get the calls too. It's important that obviously there's a lot of big names on the Ballyhale side of the thing, but it's important that Callum Lyons is kind of very strong and make sure both sides are reffed accordingly because, one free one way or another if it's a tight game.
They're saying it's going to favour these Kilkenny Galacticos.
I don't know. I mean, like, you see in these games...
You're putting it on record that, this is something he needs to watch out for.
Well, look, I would just like to make sure that Borris-Ileigh get every decision
every decision, full stop.
Every decision. Nothing for Ballyhale.
Here, we'll come back to your prediction in a minute, but a couple of, obviously, other interesting games as well, just to touch on, just to get a quick prediction from you in the intermediate game it's on Saturday, isn't it, at Croke Park? That
6 o'clock, I think.
We'll be keeping an eye out. Obviously, Tommy Welsh, Tullaroan up against Father O'Neill's at Cork in the intermediate final. 6 o'clock. What's going to happen there?
Well, I think everyone is fancying Tullaroan for this one. I was at their county final. I mean, I've been following all the results. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to get to intermediate matches and even the junior matches. Russell Rovers they're playing the final against Cunningham Shamrocks. But I've only seen Tullaroan once, but by God, they've a fair team. Like, so you've obviously Tommy Walsh, whose fame has even grown from being on off the ball. He's playing full forward, just a lightning rod up front, and he's just buzzing around, getting scores. Saw him scoring a goal in the county final. We all saw that celebration with his father after the game.
Incredible.
It was really... And I watched it again last night.
You were at that?
Yeah, I was at that. And it wasn't just that they had a hug. They stayed at it for about 30 seconds.
On the ground, rolling around.
Yeah, rolling around. Like,
that's lovely though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant because it's unbridled joy. Yeah. And it's hard to beat because they're, much like me talking about the identity with Borris-Ileigh and Hurling, no doubt it's the same there. Yeah. There's such a great history with that club with so many senior county titles in Kilkenny. But they've got Martin Keown in the team, who people would have seen in the Kilkenny team in the last year or two. He's young enough. You've got Pádraig Walsh, who's of course centre-back for Kilkenny, and you imagine him running the show at intermediate club level. And then you've got the other Tommy Walsh, who I think's their cousin, playing a full-back, and he would have played in the Leinster Championship for Kilkenny last year. So it's hard not to fancy them. Father O'Neill's, obviously having a great run too, no doubt about it. They'd be part of, like, Declan Dalton would be their most famous player, and he would have won a county title senior with McKillie this year, so he's jumping between Father O'Neill's and McKillie. And in the semi-final against Turin of Mayo, he scored one of these wonderful points that Phil Egan caught on Snapchat, where the ball was on the ground, his hurley was kind of been held back, and he actually stabbed the ball with his toe and lifted it up, caught it, twisted and turned and lashed it over the bar. It should be a good final, but I think most people are thinking Tullaroan are going to get it done.
Yeah, right, well, let's loop back then. So we've the 2 games, obviously, at Croker on Sunday. The 4 o'clock game is the AIB GAA Football Ireland Senior Club Championship final between Corofin and Kilcoo, as said, at 4, and then before that, Ballyhale against Borris-Ileigh, 2 o'clock. Troy, are you working at it?
No, I decided not to.
Good man.
I might go in and do a few interviews afterwards and head into the dressing room with the camera. But no, I think this is one I was going to, but I said no, I can't not. I have to be able to head down and have to crack with. And this is
you wouldn't be able to contain yourself, anyways.
No, I mean, like, I want so much for Borris-Ileigh to win this game. I want my parents to enjoy the kick out of this. I want obviously my brother to win in All Ireland. I have a few cousins on the team, a few other lads that are friends on the team. I mean, to be dour enough to go down and do the interviews and then go back up, transcribe them and start writing an article. And you'd probably be, this is assuming they win, you'd probably be too buzzing to actually write a coherent article. And then if you were, if Borris-Ileigh had lost, you'd probably be too disappointed and you'd want to just throw the laptop in over the side of the Hogan stand.
Yeah, and so you probably don't get to too many games as a job hunter anyway, so you might as well go in and watch.
Sure, most of the time you're in there analysing anyway,
You're obviously going to tell me Borris-Ileigh are going to win it?
I just, like in any of the games, Borris-Ileigh have always been underdogs, and like against Ballygunner, serious underdogs. And I just still went with Borris-Ileigh anyway, just because you want to believe that the magic can continue. So against my head, my heart says Borris-Ileigh.
Right. I hear you. Right, enjoy the game. We'll probably catch up with you next week, I'm sure, to pick through whatever it is going to happen. Thanks, William. And check out obviously reminding people to check out the mini doc up online. Brilliant stuff.
Really enjoyable to do it even.
9 on this Friday morning. And a reminder that as part of a partnership with the GAA for that AIB All-Ireland Club Championships, OTB Productions shot that beautiful piece that Shane and Johnny McCann were down in Borris-Ileigh last week to shoot in the company of some absolute legends. So go and check that out. It's up on offtheball.com. It's on our YouTube channel and our social channels as well. So head along there and you can see for yourself. It's 9 on this Friday morning. We've got Deal or No Deal upcoming, and we're getting stuck into our top 5 stories again straight after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
There's a growing hostility towards cyclists. We're somehow seen as a nuisance, when in fact we're just people trying to get to work.
I've never ever gotten one bad word said to me about my sexuality, or from the opposition, or from, actually in one bad times nearly, the girl was marking me so tightly, I was like, I have a girlfriend.
I'm not the person I was 10 years ago, and that doesn't worry me. I know I can play good enough golf.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon, only on Off the Ball.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes, but for you and the community. For families, check out our kids' camps, sport academies and birthday parties. For adults, why not join our newly refurbished gym with a 50-metre swimming pool, or book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities, including our athletics track, sports pitches and courts. And for companies, check out our team building days, conference facilities and events. All this and more at sportirelandcampus.ie.
OTB AM.
All right, reminder of our top 5 stories of the morning. Gary O'Driscoll, we discussed the Arsenal doctor, former Irish rugby doctor, and he's on his way to, it looks as if he's on his way to join Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, and which should be pretty exciting times for him. We'll keep a watching brief on that one. The Kenyan athlete who hopped out the window when the testers were in town because he needed to answer a call to nature, it turns out. I mean, we'll see the offshoots of that, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. TV figures, we brought you through those a little bit earlier on, what was making the grade. What was the number 1 TV? Tommy's grinning at me out there. Have you thought about it, Tommy? Have you anything to add? You Google it, but I mean, that's kind of not really the point. And then the Australian Open, which we're getting to now, in the company of Colm Buhig. Good morning to you, Colm.
Good morning.
What was the top watched TV show?
I'm trying to tell by Tommy's eyes.
29. He doesn't know. The top sport/non-sport of 2019?
See, I would have thought the football final, the first match.
What you're saying of everything sport, not
yeah, I would have thought that because there was such buzz around it, because the build up to it.
There is one show.
And then when you were listening out 10 to 2, I was like, I'm all out here.
There's one show that every year blitzes every other thing that's on the TV.
I'm a celebrity.
No. Was he just stating that, or were you?
Yeah, it's my time to say it.
Yeah.
Finally.
No, and
I'm not gonna.
No, I'm not going to. I mean, I think people should. You should. Tommy has it there, I think. I mean, he's humming it.
He's happy.
He's singing a theme tune to me there. We'd before we get stuck into the Australian Opens, which is what we need to talk about, with Kenny Cunningham on a bit earlier.
Yeah.
There are very few people in the plant that I would sort of have as far up the pecking order in terms of general life etiquette as I would you. And he was talking about it being the 7th. He himself, by the way, on the 17th of January, was the one who led off with "Happy New Year, Adrian."
Yeah.
And I replied with "Happy New Year, Kenny." And then he admonished himself for wishing a Happy New Year to somebody on the 17th of January. Is it bad etiquette at this stage?
No, you still say it. Like, what I always think is, when do you when do you stop saying Happy Christmas and start saying Happy New Year in that week between Christmas and New Year's?
Probably the day after Stephen's Day. Probably Stephen's Day. Probably Stephen's Day.
Tommy's saying the 1st of January.
No.
No, you can't say Happy Christmas after like 2 or 3 days after Christmas.
You can't.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
No, I'm saying you can't say it even on Stephen's Day. It's like.
Yeah, I agree with that. As for this side of the year, you're stopping around now, aren't you? It's disingenuous at this stage.
Well, he was like, actually, he was sort of saying, I can't believe what I just said there. That's.
Although I did wish someone a Happy New Year this morning that I haven't seen.
Fine,
yeah, that's grand.
Through the day, like I don't.
Dry January, I don't get either.
Issue with the Australian Open. It's been under a cloud in every sense, obviously, and whether it was going to go ahead, the conditions, and I saw some of the players giving out about it after the bushfires, and obviously the rains have arrived and have hopefully cooled things down a bit. What's the state of play?
There's never been such talk ahead of the tournament, ahead of a Grand Slam. That's nothing to do with tennis, and it's to do with player welfare.
Yeah.
Dalila Jukopovic, who's a Slovenian tennis player, WTA Tour, she was in the qualifiers last week for the Australian Open, and she had to pull out mid-match because she had such an intense coughing fit. She did an interview with CNN afterwards to explain what actually happened. There's video footage of her, and she's down on her hands and knees coughing on the court. And it's worrying to see, because she said that the coughing was one thing, which happened early in the first set, but by the time it came to the end of the second set, she was having a panic attack because she couldn't breathe. Wow. And she had to retire from the match, and the match was really close. It was a really close fought game, so it was a tight 2 sets. And tennis, for the vast majority of professional players, is a massive struggle. Huge struggle, both financially and emotionally, because you have to play all the time to get your ranking points, and the money isn't great. And she's one of those players. It's really only the elite players on both sides of the men's and women's draw that make really good money from it, like your top 100 players. But there's so many players obviously outside of that, and she's one of them. And she was so frustrated because she feels that the organisers of the Australian Open haven't helped the players in any way, and she's not the only one. Alina Svitolina, the Ukrainian player who's well established, she got to the semi-final of Wimbledon just last year. She tweeted about it on the back of that withdrawal, on the back of that coughing fit, saying that this is ridiculous, that there is no help at all to player. There's no thought for player welfare in any way.
What would the expectation have been that they might have done, other than obviously delay until such time as?
Well, there was a talk. I even heard our own Richie McCormick say it the other day. There was a talk of delaying the start of the tournament until the bushfires have completely dissipated and it's back to some way of normality. Now, I know we're still in the depths of the Australian summer, and it's brutally hot there in Melbourne, and I know that from experience, having gone there in 2014, and it is incredibly hot, but they're used to that. And I guess if we were to push it out for another week or two, that the players' health wouldn't be under such intense risk. It's also not such a problem when you're on the show courts, because they're much more well ventilated. It's on the outside courts that are the problem. And again, this goes back to the less established players. So,
and have officials had anything to say, rationale in terms of why they wouldn't have just done something like that?
I think they're feeling this is the scale of these bushfires is it's pretty unprecedented, and I guess they're kind of thinking on their feet and trying to do their best. And for the elite level players, they're fine because they're on the show courts. It doesn't really matter
because they're enclosed.
Yeah, so they're well looked after. But it's the other players, and the other players make up such the vast majority of professional tennis, and that's why there's such annoyance about the whole thing. Like Maria Sharapova had a warm-up match in Brisbane last week.
they had to stop playing that because of the conditions. Eugenie Boucard, the Canadian player, she got to the Wimbledon semi-final in 2014. She kind of gone off the boil a bit, and she had to play the qualifiers last week as well in Australia. And she had to stop her game 2 or 3 times to take a break, to go out, get some water and come back on. And it's just when you hear it being described as panic attacks, that's the serious worry of it.
Could they not? Because they have more than one. Have they 2 or 3 enclosed courts?
Yeah, and for all 4 Grand Slams that would be the case. But you can only have so many matches, because you have to have the doubles and the mixed doubles as well.
So I mean, fair enough, right? But
like scheduling nightmare.
I mean, ditching the mixed doubles, I don't think anybody's going to lose too much sleep over.
That's unfair in mixed doubles.
Could you? Well, it is, but in the grand scheme of, we've got to try and look after player welfare, and we've got to try and get the tournament run off. So we're going to prioritise the singles games or the doubles games, whatever it might be, and open those courts from 5 a.m. until 2 a.m. and just have them in non-stop action and get the, because I mean, if I'm a tennis player, I know what you're saying. Like, obviously, you had to go off and get some water and had to take a bit of a break, but like, you're going back onto the court under the assumption that you're going to be ingesting more dust.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
Yeah, and that's Kim Clijsters was saying that this week too. She won the Australian Open in 2011. Actually, she's actually back playing, but she's injured, so she can't compete this week. And she was saying just that there's no alternative even options or suggestions coming from the Australian Open organisers, and they're just going ahead with it as if nothing's happening at all. And in the meantime, the players have tried their best, the elite level players. They had Rally for Relief, which was all kind of the most established players in the world, like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Nick Kyrgios, Serena Williams, Coco Gauff, the defending champion Naomi Osaka. They all took to the Rod-Laver Arena. They had an exhibition mess around match, and all the money raised that night went to the relief. They raised 4.8 million Australian dollars, which was pretty impressive. And both Federer and Nadal themselves donated $250,000 each straight to the relief fund. And then you might have heard earlier this month, Nick Kyrgios as well, he said, for every ace I'll donate $200 to the relief fund for the entire summer season in Australia. So that goes on beyond. So there has been efforts to help out financially from the elite level players, but I think this whole thing's going to be overshadowed by the bushfires.
He said for every ace he's going to donate $200.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just donate them?
Well, and actually we had that debate on Off the Ball the other day, when I think it was Nathan and Richie were talking about it, that why doesn't he just do that? But I guess, look, I understand that point completely, that why doesn't he just do it and stay quiet and just donate the money?
Or even if he wants to make a fuss about it. I'm not suggesting
that's
quietly.
What he's doing.
I'm not suggesting quietly. I'm saying make a song and dance about it. But like, I'll donate either like 40 grand or if...
Yeah, you're saying it's reliant on his play himself. Yeah. But that's the way he went about it, and it's received really well. Sure, Matt Ryan did the same thing, the Brighton goalkeeper, the Aussie. For every save last week in the Premier League, he donated money to the relief fund. I think in total, all the saves was $28,000.
So, what's the story?
Well, it's all about probably Serena Williams in the WTA side. If she wins the Australian Open, she'll finally equal Margaret Court's all-time record of 24 Grand Slam titles. Serena hasn't won a Grand Slam in exactly 3 years. The Australian Open in 2017, where she beat her sister. And she was actually pregnant during that tournament without realising that she was pregnant. It was a pretty impressive feat. And she actually destroyed the whole field. Then she went on maternity leave, came back. And would you believe, since then, she's played in 4 Grand Slam finals to try and get that 24th title. And she's lost all 4 Grand Slam finals in straight sets, despite her getting to the final by, again, destroying the whole field. But when it comes to the final, there's obviously this mental block. So earlier this month, she won her first title at all in 3 years at the Auckland Open, which Shane Hannon reported for us on OffTheBall.com. So with that in mind, the fact that she's won a title for the first time in 3 years, you'd be really strong bet on her winning this and finally equaling the 24th title. As for the men's side, Novak Djokovic won last year. He won his 7th Australian Open title, which means he's won the most ever of anyone. And you have to strongly bet that he's going to do that. But interestingly enough, Roger Federer is on his side of the draw, so those two can meet in the semi-final if it goes all the way. And then Rafa Nadal is world number 1, but he's only won this tournament once ever, funnily enough, in 2009. Hasn't even won it in the last decade. The last decade has been dominated by Federer and Djokovic. They're the only 2 players who have won the Australian Open from 2010 to 2019, with the exception of Stan Van Wawrinka in 2014, which I was at.
You've mentioned that you were in Australia.
No, but I want to mention it for this reason, right? I got access to, you get a 3-day access. You don't get show cards, but you get everything else. But the best thing about it, right, you get to see them train up really close and personal. And that was better than the matches themselves.
Right.
Like, because they have guys who just are hitting partners with them, professional players, who just hit with them. And any time the elite level players wanted to just turn up the pace or change tacts, they would just flick of the wrist.
Just had a realisation that you are the sort of John Malloy equivalent, golf/tennis equivalent, that you'd rather be on the driving range watching these lads.
It was way better because your access, the proximity to them is amazing. So that was that was the exception. 2014. Every other year, it's been Djokovic, Nadal. This year as well, from the British perspective, let's say, of interest was Andy Murray, which was a remarkable return. I don't know if you remember, but last year at the Australian Open, he lost in the first round to Roberto Batista, the Spaniard. And on court afterwards, he was surprised by this video message that was shown on the big screen in the Borris-Ileigh Arena from all his peers paying tribute to an amazing career, because everyone thought he was retiring. Because before that tournament, he had a very emotional press conference. It was actually probably exactly this day last year. And he broke down in the press conference saying he won't be able to play anymore. And 12 months on, he's back competing in the singles. He actually won the European Open in October against Stan Wawrinka in the final. But unfortunately, he got injured over Christmas preparing for this event. He's a pelvic problem, so he can't play, which is a massive shame, because his return is remarkable, because he was gone. Like, this guy was finished. And he actually played the doubles and mixed doubles at Wimbledon last year with Serena in the mixed. And he was steadily going to get back to singles. As I say, won the European Open in October, but he's out now. So it is a shame, because it would have been great to see him. And finally, Caroline Wozniacki too is retiring after this event. Only 29 years of age. She's not injured, so she's done a bit of a David Bentley on this. She's just walking away. She won the Australian.
I think her career has been slightly better than.
Well, she won the Australian Open in 2018. Yeah, she has had an amazing career. She's won 34 single titles in total. But she's going off. She wants to start a family with her husband, and she just wants to pursue other interests. So she's finishing up after this at 29 years of age, so this will be her last tournament, and it'll be amazing if she won it again. She's a massive outside bet of winning it, of course, but she did win it 2 years ago, so you never know.
And Venus Williams against Coco Gauff.
Yeah, amazing. It's odd because, that was the first round of Wimbledon last year, which Coco Gauff, she's still only 15. I was talking to Phil Egan about it yesterday. She's not 16 until March.
That isn't
the day one of Wimbledon, she got one autograph request on the walk to the match to play Venus. And by the end of that day, she was a global superstar.
Great name as well.
Great name.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Back again, our resident nostalgia expert and tennis correspondent, and I'm sure we'll have a few more monikers as well by the time we're done with him. Colin Buhig with the preview of the Australian Open, which gets underway, so thanks a million for that. Phil Egan is going to be next for Deal or No Deal. Before all of that, John Giles on the show last night speaking about the dynamic between successful managers and their assistants.
Just briefly, a text in from Gavin saying what Ferguson also did, he was bringing a new number 2 every few years to freshen things up. So he changed the system.
I never believed that.
No? You didn't think they had a real influence?
It's been a big thing in football that when there's somebody, if you go back on Ferguson, I think one of his first number 2s was Brian Kidd. And I know, like, I was in football at the time. Brian Kidd is doing everything. Brian Kidd went to Blackburn, didn't last 6 months. McLaren, you remember McLaren? He was number 2. McLaren's doing all the work there. I've heard it so many times. But when all these guys left, did he stop winning?
No.
And why? Because Ferguson was the one that stayed. You'll always get that, Nathan. The manager does nothing. I heard about Kenny Dalglish years ago when he was at Blackburn and won the league. And actually I was talking to a guy that was close to it at the time. I said, how's Kenny doing? He says, you never see Kenny. Doesn't do anything. The coach does everything, right? Start the season came. Coach Kenny didn't resign. He went upstairs. Coach took over. Sacked by Christmas. So never believe it when you say the coach is doing everything, Nathan. In some clubs, they're more influential than others. But if a manager is successful over a long period of time, I can assure you it's the manager that's doing it.
I signed for them after the Euros. After my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Deal or no deal, Phil Egan? What's happening?
Deal. All good, yeah.
We almost have a deal, do we?
Yeah, because January, obviously, we're still in the early days of January in terms of getting deals done. Obviously, when the deadline is approaching and more deals get done, probably loan deals, it's hard to get
really.
People are still fannying around now. It's still a bit of like, we kind of want that guy, but like, we're not willing to pay that money for him yet.
I don't know. It was always a thing for me in school and college. Like I only really came to life when the deadline got closer. You know, the assignment had to be in. So 2 weeks away, be grand, and then you do the all-nighter.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of clubs go with that approach.
Ashley Young has pulled an all-nighter. He's in Milan, we believe, for a medical today. Off-the-ball sources are telling us that $1.5 million in bonuses if all goes smoothly.
Yeah, he's 34, and people think this is madness from Antonio Conte, but you can see what Conte's thinking is there, that he plays 3 at the back. Ashley Young has played as a wing-back. Louis van Gaal played him there quite a lot. He's obviously played in a back 4 as well. And
has he been brought in as cover, or are they looking to play him?
Well, I'd say initially he's been brought in as cover, but because they have injuries, he's going to get some game time. And if he does all right, then he keeps his place. And they're only 2 points behind Juventus, so they're still in with a chance of winning the title in Italy, which I'm sure that's an exciting prospect for Ashley Young to go into something like that. And do you know what? United fans will probably be happy to see the back of him as well, because he's 34 and he's been playing left back a bit. Obviously, Luke Shaw gets injured a lot, but the emergence of Brandon Williams makes it.
It's a bit easier to swallow.
The blow is a bit softer, but also as well, there's certain players like Ashley Young, and I know Chris Smallings is on loan at Roma now, and Phil Jones, that it's almost a reminder of how far United are off where they should be, where they still have players like this on their books.
Yesterday we brought our viewers the news, Phil, that Atletico want to sign Cavani now before he becomes a free agent in the summer. Spanish club have 20 million on the table, but PSG wanting 30 million, and according to the Manchester Evening News, that financial gap will not be bridged, and the player is set to be offered to United on a free transfer next summer. So is he going to improve? Is the 33-year-old going to improve Manchester United in the way that they need?
He'd definitely be an improvement in terms of what they have at the moment. Martial is playing in that number 9 role, and when he's good, he's very good, but he blows hot and cold. He's had a few injuries. Obviously, Greenwood is the real prospect there. He looks like the best finisher of them all, and having Cavani there, if you're getting him on a free, you know, if you only get a season or 2 out of him, there's no harm in that.
Yeah.
I still don't understand why, if Atletico are saying we'll give you 20, PSG are saying we want 30. Somebody else just say, right, 25, let's shake it.
So you leave a number. Oh no, we'll just hang on to him and then get nothing for this.
But he will be able to demand quite high wages, and I wonder, will that put United off, because they'll just think back to the Alexis Sanchez move and they gave him huge wages, and you'd almost forget that Alexis Sanchez once played for Manchester United, because I'm sure a lot of United fans want to forget that.
Staying with the Manchester Evening News, their sources also indicating that United want Atletico Madrid midfielder Marcos Llorente. So the paper saying that United focusing on players lacking game time at clubs at the major European leagues with large squads outside the Premier League to solve their midfield crisis. So the 24-year-old out of favour. Would he make an impact at Old Trafford, Phil?
Well, that's their real weakness, is in midfield, and it's all well and good signing players like Marcos Llorente or Bruno Fernandes, but I kind of look at the United structure at the moment and I'm wondering, are they signing players with an idea of how they want to play? So, you know, when Pep Guardiola signs a player, he's got an idea of the role this player will have.
Klopp
as well. So are they signing players? They need midfielders, but we still haven't really seen exactly what Solskjaer is trying to do in terms of an identity. Obviously, United's strongest assets at the moment are playing counter-attack football. And that's all well and good in certain games, but if United are going to get back to the top, they can't be a counter-attacking team.
But can't it be true that so it's a fair point, right? Because ideally you're bringing in the players that are playing to your system. That might take some time, and during that time you may need to get rid of the shit and bring in some players that aren't necessarily everything you want, but they're better than what you have.
Yeah, there's a progression, and you might stumble across the odd player that you sign, you think they could make the team better, and they turn out to be even better than you could have imagined. But I think my worry is that, does Solskjaer know exactly what he's trying to do? Is there a long-term plan in there where he signs a player who, say for example, Bruno Fernandes, who I'm sure is like the deal is going to get done soon enough, and we know that he's going to make a difference because he's a good player technically. He can score goals. He can pick a pass. And you look at the lack of goals from midfield that they have, where, fairness to Fred, he doesn't lack confidence. He keeps shooting. He can be wild at times. But if you're signing players and you're just kind of putting them into a system that you haven't really determined what exactly you're trying to do. As I said, United's best performances that we've seen under Solskjaer have been counter-attacking performances. Yeah. And look, that will come. Like, you can't just all of a sudden be a team that dominates possession and plays teams off the park. I get that will come, but I'm just wondering how far they've thought ahead of this in terms of, is it a case that they're signing players for 2 or 3 years to get to, say, they need to become a consistent top 4 team before they can start thinking of challenging for the Premier League title again.
Emre Can been linked to Manchester United. He says that he'll never join the club because of his Liverpool link. Would you be grievously outraged by the fact that Emre Can might become a Manchester United player? This seems ridiculous on his part.
Yeah, but I think it says a lot. I don't know, I could be wrong on this. Maybe Liverpool fans will disagree with me. But if Emre Can signed for Manchester United, would Liverpool fans honestly care? Because during his time at Liverpool, he was okay. You know, he scored a really good overhead against Watford. He kind of broke into the team under Brendan Rodgers when Rodgers experimented with 3 at the back, and Chan was one of the 3, and he suited that system because he's a ball player. But he's quite slow, and I always felt watching him as Klopp was trying to develop how he wanted to play, and you know, he wanted a certain intensity and a certain speed to the way they attacked. Chan kind of slowed it all down. A very good footballer, and maybe again he's one of these players that he'd certainly make an improvement if you put him into the United team, because he is a good footballer. And you know, if United are trying to work on a style where they need to control games more, Emre Can would fit that profile. But it sounds like he doesn't want to go. But as I said, there is certain players that have done it. Michael Owen, and a lot of Liverpool fans will look at Michael Owen in a different way now because he has that.
Even after he said he never really wanted to go to Newcastle.
But he's still
craving Liverpool to come and get me.
Yeah, and he scored a famous winning goal in a Manchester derby, and Liverpool fans won't forget that. So they, you know, even though they can remember how good he was before he got his move to Real Madrid, there'll be an asterisk beside Michael Owen, I think, for a lot of Liverpool fans.
What are you thinking? 3-0, 3-1 Sunday?
I think it'll be tight because it's the nature of the fixture. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to think back to the last time Liverpool had it. They won 3-1 there last season, but you know, it wasn't until Shaqiri came off the bench that things changed. Now, Liverpool were so much better in that game, but you think back to when Kenny Dalglish was in charge, Dirk Kuyt scored a hat-trick. That's probably the last time Liverpool had a really emphatic win.
But the gap has never. Has it ever been wider?
And you know, United will be up for this game, and we don't know if Rashford's going to be fit or not. If Rashford isn't fit, then you just play Daniel James on the left, and it still gives Liverpool the same problem down the right, where Trent Alexander-Arnold obviously wants to go forward, but in the back of his mind he'd be thinking, I've got to watch out. I've got a pacey winger that I'm going to have to keep an eye on. But I think Liverpool will win, but I don't think it'll be.
It's not going to be. It's not a 1-goal win, is it?
No. Do you know what?
2-0, 3-0, 3-1.
It could be a 2-goal win, but because it's Manchester United, even if Liverpool were 2-0 up or they were 1-0 up, and Liverpool are obviously keeping a lot of clean sheets now, there'd still be a bit of tension there because Liverpool have only obviously dropped 2 points all season. It was against United, and Liverpool would hate that it would be United to end that 51-game unbeaten run in the league at Anfield. They would. I think most people have accepted that Liverpool are going to probably go on and win the league now, but they still wouldn't want.
Be a bad taste.
Yeah, I mean, look, Liverpool fans won't care if they win the league at the end of the season. They won't care, but it would just probably leave a bit of a sour taste on Sunday if it was United that ended the run. And
wouldn't be great for the greatest coach in world sport at the minute, Philip,
who hasn't got the best of records against United, but you can see that certainly improving. And the difference this time for an Anfield game, no Jose Mourinho. I was at the first one. They built it up as Red Monday was an awful game, 0-0 draw, following season 0-0, last season 3-1, and that was the end of Mourinho. So Solskjaer won't go as ultra defensive as that. They'll definitely try and get men behind the ball, but I think Liverpool have shown enough this season.
I'm going 3-1. What are you thinking?
Well, it was 3-1 last season, so I don't think maybe 2-1.
More of the same, Phil. Go out of that. Thanks, William.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Phil Egan. As always, for Deal or No Deal, it's 9:33. It's Friday morning. We're almost done for this morning. Plenty more good stuff coming up on OTB Sports Radio. Stay tuned to the Go Loud app or on offtheball.com or whatever it is that you consume us. And a reminder as well that next Wednesday, Off the Ball's American football show, The Snap, is going to be going on the road for the very first time in association with the Aer College Football Classic as we build up to one of the biggest events in the sporting calendar, Super Bowl 54. We're going to be live from the NFL room at the Woolshed. It's a great room in a great venue. It's in Dublin for a live preview panel of the Showpiece event in Miami. Hosts of The Snap, Ger Gilroy, Rhoda Mullen and Cian Fahey, are going to be joined by Mike Carlson and other special guests to be announced to look ahead to the finale of the NFL season. There'll also be a little bit of college football chat in there, I'm certain. And it's all in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic at Navy v Notre Dame at the Aviva Stadium on August 29th. Check out collegefootballireland.com for game tickets and more. It is, I understand, sold out. But if there are any last-minute tickets, you can go up onto offtheball.com/events, and we'll get you any last-minute tickets will appear up there. Stay tuned to our social channels as well. So that's it from this morning's OTB AM. Thanks a million for joining us. Off the Ball going to be back in your radios tonight from 7 o'clock and over the weekend. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast, fully time-stamped, which makes it a bit easier for you to find exactly what it is you want from every morning's 2-hour show. If you missed anything this morning, the top 5 stories from the Friday morning are up there. Football with Kenny Cunningham, including a Happy New Year to him. The Club GA finals in the company of Shane Stapleton. Rugby and plenty of it with Alan Quinlan up there as well from first thing this morning. Also, just a reminder this week that we've had some great stuff on the show. Paul Galvin exclusive, Stephen Ferris on Ireland, Joe Brolly was in studio as well for 45-minute chat and plenty more as well. Besides, you can find us on podcast, also up on YouTube, where you can cast us to your smart TV. OTB AM, Ireland's first and only sports breakfast show, and we're here every weekday morning from 7:30. Live and off the ball this weekend, Leinster against Benetton and Liverpool against Manchester United in the company of Nathan Murphy and David Myler. So it's a packed and stacked OTB for you this weekend. From myself, from this morning, good morning.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.